The transfer student was a mystery wrapped in silence. With his head always bowed, he existed in his own world, seemingly invisible. Most students looked right past him, but the female population was captivated. One afternoon, as he drifted into slumber, a group of girls gathered to admire his ethereal features. One bold student even captured his sleeping face, showing it to him later with a shy blush. But the sweet atmosphere shattered the moment her boyfriend stormed in. Witnessing the intimacy, jealousy twisted the boyfriend's face. He began ridiculing the newcomer, mocking his silence and his slender frame. The girl brushed off his toxicity, ordering Tae-soo to take his seat before the bell rang. But the tension only simmered beneath the surface. Later that day, Tae-soo caught his girlfriend fanning the silent boy again. She didn't spare Tae-soo a single glance, her attention fixed entirely on Ji-sundae. This distraction proved fatal for his focus during the match. Smack, a stray ball slammed directly into his face. At first, he forced a laugh, masking his humiliation with a cold glare at the couple. But once the game ended, the facade dropped. Tae-soo violently shaved the head of the student who threw the ball. No one was allowed to damage his reputation without paying a blood price. By a twist of fate, this brutal display happened right where Ji-sun was resting. He witnessed every second of the tyranny. Realizing he had an audience, Tae-soo threatened to give Ji-sun the same humiliating haircut. Yet the protagonist remained silent. He simply stared, his eyes void of emotion. Tae-soo tried to intimidate him, but he couldn't extract a single drop of fear. Unnerved by that abyssal gaze, he retreated, claiming he didn't want drama with the girls. That night, darkness gathered. As Ji-sun walked home, two students intercepted him. The message was clear, the boyfriend demanded his presence. When Ji-sun arrived at the meeting spot, the boyfriend thrust the girl's phone in his face. The screen displayed the stolen wallpaper photo of Ji-sundae. The girl tried to defuse the explosive situation, insisting it meant nothing and urging Ji-sun to leave. But her defense only fueled the fire. Consumed by rage, the boyfriend lashed out. A heavy slap sent her crashing to the cold pavement. "Why do you defend him over me?" he roared. She rose, her spirit unbroken. "You call yourself my boyfriend, yet you spend every night chasing other women." Fury blinded him. He drove a kick into her stomach. But as he raised his hand for a second strike, a shadow moved. Ji-sun caught the blow in midair. The boyfriend put his entire weight behind a punch, but it was like striking an iron wall. When he swung again, Ji-sun vanished from his sight. In a blur of motion, Ji-sun delivered a devastating counterpunch. The impact sent the bully crumbling to the earth. A heavy silence descended upon the stunned crowd. The other delinquents roared and charged, but Ji-sun dismantled them with surgical precision one by one. Then he turned his cold gaze back to the ringleader. He rained down strikes, a machine of pure violence, until the girl finally grabbed his arm. In that frozen second, the truth dawned on her. This wasn't just a quiet student. He harbored a monstrous darkness within his soul. As she left the school grounds, another nightmare unfolded before her eyes. A gang of boys had cornered Ji-sun, dragging him into the shadows to meet with Tae-soo. She froze, witnessing the abduction from afar. Her mind raced, trying to process the danger. Fear told her to run, but her conscience wouldn't permit it. She couldn't leave him to the wolves. Steeling her resolve, she decided to follow. Gripping her umbrella like a weapon, she sprinted to the corner, finding a vantage point to observe the chaos. Peeking out, her eyes widened in horror. Ji-sun was dismantling the entire group. He wasn't human. He was a force of nature while his attackers screamed for mercy. She stood paralyzed, her breath caught in her throat at the display of raw brutality. It was a terrifying yet awe-inspiring sight. As the dust settled, the boy walked away, leaving broken bodies in his wake. He passed the very spot where she hid beneath her umbrella. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, an eternity of silence. Trembling, she offered him shelter from the rain, but Ji-sun simply turned away. He walked into the downpour, letting the rain wash over him, a solitary figure in the storm. The next morning, the light revealed an empty desk. Tae-soo was missing, which was typical, but Ji-sun's absence, that sent ripples through the classroom. Her friends sighed, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Without Ji-sun's silent presence, the world felt strangely hollow. Meanwhile, in the murky underworld, the survivor of the previous night's massacre was trembling as he reported to a superior. The man's eyes narrowed. Tae-soo, their top fighter, was in the hospital. He demanded answers about the state of his subordinate. The messenger stammered the grim details. Tae-soo suffered severe facial fractures. He refused all visitors, his pride shattered along with his bones. The report got worse. 4 other fighters were also critical. The humiliation was absolute. The boss's voice dropped an octave. "Who?" he asked. "Who has the physical power to crush Tae-soo like an insect?" "It was a transfer student named Ji-sun," the boy whispered. "He never speaks. He's a ghost. No one knows where he came from." The boss looked disgusted. 4 of his men defeated by a nameless unknown. The air in the room grew heavy with killing intent. One of the enforcers grabbed the messenger by the throat. "And you?" Did you hide like a rat to save your own skin? Gasping for air, the boy pleaded. I didn't attack, because 5 against 1 is cowardly. That's the only reason I stood back. The enforcer hurled him against the concrete wall. The boss, a mountain of a man, demanded the origin of this mysterious threat. Nobody knows, the boy cried out. He never says a word. The large man slapped him, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Useless trash. He leaned in his shadow, swallowing the boy. Does this Ji-sun have any weakness, a distinctive feature? How do we find him? Flustered and terrified, the boy stammered the only truth he knew. He is devastatingly handsome. Like a model. The girls, they worship him, style, and screamed of old money. But as he raved about the young man's visuals, the massive boss struck him down. He demanded to know if he had fallen for the target. Meanwhile, the boss was obsessed with decoding the enigma of the silent transfer student. His name was Ji-sun. A fighter with a face carved by the gods, a diamond in the rough that money couldn't buy. The boss was lost in thought, captivated by the mere idea of Ji-sun's perfection. The next day, amidst the mundane school life, Ji-sun approached the Protagonist lockers to secure his gear. But he wasn't alone. A shadow lurked nearby, stalking him like a predator. The spy remembered the boss's demonic fury. He had no choice but to accept this suicide mission to investigate the target. But now, faced with the reality of the task, cold sweat trickled down his spine. Ji-sun opened his locker, revealing a void that was almost absolute. Suddenly, a vibration broke the silence. A lone phone lay inside, lighting up with notifications. He retrieved the device. The screen flashed with congratulations, a free gift. It was an ancient model, but the X-T-Talk app was active. A mysterious voice promised to listen to any burden Ji-sun carried. The silent protagonist scanned his surroundings, his instincts sharp. Yet the two spies remained hidden from his piercing gaze. A trembling girl had planted the trap, her nerves nearly shattering. But Ji-sun treated the device with absolute indifference, leaving it abandoned on the metal shelf as he walked away like a king. The spy saw his opening and scrambled to snatch the discarded tech. He frantically inspected the model, checking if the system was unlocked. Suddenly, impact. A violent shove sent him sprawling to the hard floor. The girl who had pushed him snatched the phone back and vanished into the crowd. The spy lay on the ground, mind reeling. Who was she? Rage boiled within him. Since when were the school bullies this savage? Elsewhere, Yuri chattered to Yana about a litter of puppies her aunt's poodle had delivered. She desperately wanted to adopt one, but her father was an iron wall. But her words fell on deaf ears. Yana was drifting in a sea of her own thoughts again. Yuri guessed the truth. She was worried about Ji-sun. He had been a ghost for 2 whole days. Suddenly, Yuri gasped. Look, there he was. Ji-sun stood with the posture of a soldier, his eyes empty pools of darkness. Yana froze time, stopping in that instant. She shoved her bag into the friend's hands, and sprinted. She slammed into the boy, wrapping him in a desperate embrace that shocked the entire hallway. Tears streamed down her face. Are you okay? She cried, her voice trembling. I will never forget that you saved my life. The spy, watching from the shadows, smirked. Theory confirmed. The girls were obsessed with Ji-sun. He tapped furiously on his phone, logging the data. Target arrives late. Target is a chick magnet. Target remains a mute enigma. At the end of the school day, the protagonist walked his usual path. But the streets were not empty. Predators were lying in wait. As the target came into view, one thug realized the rumors were true. This guy's aura was completely different. He signaled his partner with a sharp whistle. Engines roared as they tailed him on scooters, circling like hyenas to cut off his escape. They blocked his path. Are you Ji-sun? The question hung in the air, met only by silence. But that silence was all the confirmation they needed. Get on the bike, the leader commanded. We're your ride today. He leaned in, dropping a name that carried weight. Ever heard of Kang Do-il from Deso Technical High? In the second-year hierarchy, Kang was a living legend. He sat on the throne of the top 3. Nobody was ignorant of his power. Deso Tech was a battlefield of monsters, unlike Ji-sun's school, which was a playground for nerds. Kang wants an audience with you, the thug sneered. Don't wet yourself. It's just an invite. You won't die. Yet, Ji-sun stood like a statue, his indifference piercing their egos. The thugs lost their patience, screaming for him to comply. One henchman made a fatal mistake. He grabbed the protagonist's backpack. You have 2 choices, he threatened. Ride with us comfortably or ride with broken legs. Which do you prefer? Ji-sun's response was simple. He released the bag, letting it hit the ground like trash, and kept walking. That was the spark. The thugs exploded with rage, revving their engines to hunt him down. Ji-sun darted into the labyrinth of a narrow alley. The first pursuer couldn't handle the turn crash. He slammed into the wall, but the second hunter didn't slow down. Not even a towering staircase could stop him. He drove the bike up the steps, defying gravity to catch his prey. Just as the bike closed in, Jason reacted. With a casual flick of his leg, he launched a heavy trash bag into the air. Direct hit. The rider was swept off the bike, tumbling down the stairs in a chaotic avalanche of metal and garbage crashing onto his partner at the bottom. The first thug stared at the wreckage in horror. "What did you do, you idiot?" Adrenaline kicked in. They scrambled to their feet, sprinting after the boy who was already fading into the distance. They watched him turn yet another. They drifted the narrow corner, desperate to close the distance. However, the moment they cleared the turn, a massive staircase loomed before them, mocking their efforts. Halfway up, a silhouette was scrambling away. They sprinted, grabbing the boy by the collar, but the face that turned wasn't Jin. A total stranger. Their blood boiled with humiliation. Blind with rage, they unleashed a brutal assault on the innocent student, punishing him simply for existing in their path. High above on the rooftop, Jin watched the violence with cold eyes before ghosting away. The atmosphere back at the hideout was suffocating. The underlings reported their failure, trembling before the heavy-set lieutenant. "Useless trash," Daishik roared his foot, connecting with their ribs. They stammered excuses about an alleyway that twisted like a maze. But the boss Kang Doyle wasn't listening to excuses. His anxiety was rising like a tide. He turned his gaze to Sunung Min. "Tell me you have something," he demanded. With shaking hands, Sunung Min offered his phone, praying it was enough. Kang Doyle scanned the screen. 3 pathetic lines of intel. His expression darkened instantly. "Is this a joke?" he hissed. "You call this an investigation?" Daishik, reading the room, forced Sunung Min to the floor next to the others. The boss raised a hand. "Let the rat go," he commanded. "But listen closely. Tomorrow, you bring Jin to the back gate." His voice dropped an octave, dripping with menace. "Can you handle that?" He then ordered Daishik to ensure the capture happened. "I need to look Jin in the eye by tomorrow." The order was absolute. Daishik bowed, accepting the mission. Sunung Min felt the blood drain from his face. He was drowning, sinking deeper into a nightmare with no escape. The next morning dawned with a heavy weight. Sunung Min was buying 2 sodas when a classmate approached. "Is that for me?" "Dream on," Sunung Min snapped, his nerves frayed. "There's no reason I'd buy you anything." "Then who is it for?" the friend asked. Just then, Jin walked past like a lone wolf. Sunung Min's eyes lit up. It was showtime. He hurried up behind the silent protagonist. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, thrusting the soda toward him with a practiced smile. "I just wanted to clear the air." He started talking fast. "I know I hung out with Taksu's crew, but I'm not really one of them." He tried to find common ground. "Honestly, watching Taksu get destroyed the other day, it felt amazing. Like justice. Seeing him helpless took a huge weight off my chest. So I just wanted to say thank you." But Jin didn't even break stride. He treated Sunung Min like background noise, completely ignoring his existence. It was exactly the cold reaction he expected. Panic set in. How could he lure this monster to the back gate? But the memory of Daishik's fist kept him moving. Morning classes dragged on until lunch. Students flooded out, but Jin remained at his desk, catching up on sleep. Sunung Min lurked by the door, watching like a hawk. He realized then Jin never went to the cafeteria. He was a lone operator. Jin finally stirred, heading to his sanctuary on the roof. He sat on his usual bench, but his phone buzzed with a notification. "Is it bread for lunch again?" the message read. Jin crouched, using the wall for cover. Someone was watching. It was A-reum. The girl hiding nearby clutched her phone, her heart racing as she typed furiously. "Do you always eat alone up here?" she sent, followed quickly by, "Because I do too." A moment of vulnerability. "I've seen you here before," she typed. "I just felt like talking today." Jin scanned the rooftop, looking for the source. A-reum sent another clue. "Look to your left." He turned. There, peeking out, she raised a shy hand before ducking back into hiding. Her next message was a confession. "It's hard for me to face people," she admitted. "I heard you don't talk much either. I guess we're the same." She pressed on. "So, why do you choose silence?" Jin's thumb hovered over the screen, ready to reply. Suddenly, a loud voice shattered the peaceful atmosphere. It was Sunung Min, feigning surprise. "Oh, what a coincidence." He waved a package of bread. "I just came up here to eat." "What do you have there?" Jin went stone cold. Without an invitation, Sunung Min plopped down next to him. "I'll join you." The air grew heavy with awkward tension. They ate in silence until Sunung Min started sniffling. It was a pitiful sound designed to grab attention. The truth is, he sobbed, fake tears welling up. "I don't have any real friends. I only hung out with those thugs to survive. I didn't want to be a target," he whimpered. "Since we're both outcasts, maybe we could look out for each other." Jin didn't even blink. The sob story hit a wall of absolute indifference. Sunung Min's acting was winning no awards here. Jason stood up, dusting off his pants. Desperate Sunung-min scrambled up and grabbed his arm. "Are we friends or not?" he cried out. Jason pulled his arm free and walked away, not sparing him a single glance. Sunung-min was left standing in the wind, rejected. But as dismissal time approached, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Daishik. The pressure was suffocating. Where was the target? As the teacher dismissed, class panic clawed at Sungmin's throat. Time was running out. If he failed, he was dead. He scrambled through the halls, hunting for his prey. Terror mounted with every second. Had Ji-sun already left, despair nearly crushed him until he reached the 5th classroom. At first, the room seemed empty. But then he spotted Ji-sun by the window, gazing out with an air of absolute indifference. He sat there like a model in a photo shoot, bathed in sunlight. But a vibrating phone snapped Sung-min back to reality. The boss was impatient. Fear forced his legs to move. Sung-min called out, his voice trembling. He spun a web of lies about calling his mother. He claimed she was overjoyed he finally made a friend and that her only wish was to meet this new companion at her workplace. He played the filial piety card perfectly. "Music. Please," he begged. "Can you just come with me and pretend to be my friend?" Sung-min knew using a mother's love as bait was a low blow. Ji-sun couldn't possibly refuse. He held his breath, waiting. Silence hung in the air. When Ji-sun stood up without a word, Sung-min quickly took the lead, guiding the lamb to the slaughter. "To get to my mom's job, the back gate is faster," he lied, sweat trickling down his neck. The trap was set. In this neighborhood, the naive were eaten alive. Sung-min hardened his heart. It was eat or be eaten in this concrete jungle. He secretly texted Daishik their location. Suddenly, from the shadows, music. The massive bully emerged and shoulder-checked Ji-sun. The impact was heavy, meant to knock him down. But as Ji-sun stumbled, Daishik caught him by the backpack, a predator catching its prey. "Watch your step," he sneered. "If you crumble this easily, I don't see why the boss was so worried about you." With a grunt of effort, he hurled Ji-sun against the wall like a sack of garbage. "So, this is the famous silent type." He grabbed Ji-sun by the collar, lifting him effortlessly. "Music. Pretty face, but your aura is weak. You look like trash to me." But Ji-sun wasn't trembling. He planted a foot squarely on Daishik's chest, music, and shoved, launching himself out of the giant's grip. He landed with cat-like grace, but his prize, the new smartphone, slipped from his pocket, skittering toward a dark storm drain. Daishik roared and charged. "Is that all you've got?" He threw a haymaker capable of shattering bone. Ji-sun blocked steel against steel. But the sheer weight difference sent him sliding backward, dangerously close to the abyss. The drain loomed. Music. Ignoring the enemy, Ji-sun lunged for the phone, teetering on the edge, snatching it from a watery grave. Insulted by the dismissal, Daishik bellowed with fury. "Ignore me. I will grind your bones to dust with this next hit." Ji-sun rose, eyes cold and focused. Daishik laughed. "You think a twig like you can handle a tank like me?" From the sidelines, Sung-min felt a pang of guilt. He had led a sheep into the lion's den. Daishik would surely massacre him. The size difference was hopeless. Daishik charged like a raging bull, intent on breaking the smaller boy in half. "Block this if you can," he screamed. However, music. Ji-sun didn't panic. He swung his backpack like a tactical shield. The impact was thunderous, slamming Ji-sun into the wall. Daishik blinked, surprised that the kid had mitigated the damage. Using the bag, smarter than you look. Ji-sun calmly dumped the contents, lightening his load for the real battle. Cheap tricks won't save you. Daishik sprinted forward for the kill. But as the fist came down, Ji-sun vanished. He weaved aside masterfully. In a flash of genius, he looped the backpack strap around the giant's ankle and pulled with explosive force. Gravity did the rest. The massive bully crashed to the pavement, shaking the very ground beneath them. Daishik lay there, stunned. His brain couldn't process the humiliation. As he struggled to rise, the Reaper was already waiting. A precision kick snapped across his face. Bullseye. The impact echoed through the alley. How could such a slender frame generate that kind of destructive power? Sung-min watched from the shadows, his worldview shattering. The monster was being dismantled. Daishik groaned on the floor, face swelling. Ji-sun turned away with cold contempt, retrieving his phone. The fight seemed over. But pride is a dangerous drug. Daishik scrambled up, screaming like a banshee, "I'm not done with you." A sucker punch caught Ji-sun off guard, slamming into his chest. The breath left his lungs as he hit the dirt. Daishik snatched the fallen phone, holding it hostage. "Is this piece of junk really worth your life?" he taunted. "I need to take this anyway," Daishik spat. "But the boss wants you alive, unfortunately." Music. An engine roared. A getaway bike pulled up. Daishik hopped on, grinning like a demon. "You want your precious toy back? Come to Alley Park." He revved the engine. "We'll have a welcome party waiting for you." As the bike sped off, Sung-min rushed over, expecting to see a broken mess. But Ji-sun stood up, dusting himself off as if nothing happened. Not a scratch on him. Sungmin's jaw dropped. What now? Sungmin stammered. If that phone was unlocked, Ji-sun's darkest secrets were about to be exposed to the worst people imaginable. The consequences would be severe. But Ji-sun simply replied, "My mother can wait for another time. Right now, I must get to Ali Park." The spy, watching him, smirked, believing he had played his role to 120% perfection. Now the game was just to see if Ji-sun would walk into the trap. Our protagonist rose from his seat, silence cloaking him like a shroud. The observer was stunned to realize the truth. Ji-sun wasn't running away, he was hunting for his phone. Ji-sun arrived at the foot of a colossal wooden staircase that loomed like a gate to hell. He began the ascent, ignoring the murderous glares of the delinquents passing by. Music. As he reached the summit of the stairs, the enemy revealed themselves. A sea of gang members stood waiting, their killing intent palpable in the air. They parted to form a human corridor, a path leading directly to their king. The leader, euphoric, grinned with twisted satisfaction at seeing his prey arrive. He dangled the device in the air. "Is this piece of junk the treasure you came for?" Ji-sun ignored the taunt, walking straight toward the boss to reclaim what was his. The leader scoffed. "I checked it. I found absolutely nothing relevant on this device. No saved numbers. Music, no call history. Just a few pathetic texts from some girl who was stalking you." It was too clean. Confused that Ji-sun would risk his life for something so empty, the leader asked, his curiosity piqued. "What is this thing to you, really?" Ji-sun halted right in front of him, hand-extended eyes demanding his property. The boss, Music, leaned in, mocking him. "Is it a secret girlfriend? Or perhaps a romance just beginning to bloom?" He confessed that the mystery was actually quite entertaining. Frustrated by the protagonist's stone-cold silence, the leader signaled that he had already made a move. At that very moment, elsewhere in the city, Han A-reum's phone lit up with a notification. A text from the number Jess Park, promising that if she came to this location, she would officially become his girlfriend. If she fell for the bait, it would prove her heart belonged to Ji-sun. The boss laughed darkly. "If Jess and that girl become a couple today, you owe me a sweet reward later." Ji-sun did not utter a single word. He stood like an immovable mountain hand, still out waiting for his phone. The thug sneered. "Do you truly want it that bad?" He revealed that his men had struggled to even drag the previous guy to this spot. That infamous Music Toksu had been a reckless fool, and the boss had predicted that his arrogance would lead to his destruction. However, Music, despite the bad blood they had been, classmates once upon a time. He glared at Ji-sun. "Are you willing to pay the price?" The boy, however, remained mute, a reaction that brought a twisted smile to the boss's face. He was impressed by this unwavering aura. The boss then made a pact. "If you can survive my army, I will return your phone," he explained. "As a transfer. Student Jess, you have no idea how savage the hierarchy wars are in this district." By challenging Toksu, he had stepped onto a bloody battlefield. The boss declared, "I am waiting to see what kind of monster you really are." Instantly, a hulking giant charged forward, eyes burning with a thirst for vengeance. He unleashed a massive punch, but the boy weaved through the air with supernatural ease. This humiliated the large attacker, and he screamed at the pack, "Don't just watch, crush him." The order was given. The entire gang charged at the lone boy. Ji-sun danced through the chaos, dodging with godlike reflexes, yet he refused to strike back. He merely deflected their hands, mid-strike. But the sheer tsunami of enemies was too much. Blows began to land on the boy, though he managed to guard his vitals. He stumbled, balance breaking, and crashed at the feet of an attacker. The thug wasted no time delivering a precise kick to Ji-sun's face. Seeing him fall, the wolves pounced, raining down stomps on his prone form. The boss watched impassively as the boy was brutally beaten by the mob. He couldn't understand why he only defended, never attacking, never reacting. Was it a lack of spirit? Or did he simply not care about their petty hierarchy? One of the lieutenants beside the boss whispered, "Even under this storm of violence, that guy hasn't let out a single groan." He asked, "Would he rather die than give us the satisfaction of a scream?" This iron will only spiked the boss's curiosity. He wanted to break that silence. He shouted over the noise, "Whoever makes this brat scream gets a pair of limited edition Nike Air Jordan kicks. Consider it a bounty." The promise sent the gang into a frenzy. Their attacks intensified, fueled by greed. A relentless barrage of pain rained down while Ji-sun persisted in his silent defense. The boss roared, "Ji-sun, show me your true power. Prove you are a rare breed." Suddenly, Daishik stepped into the fray, ordering the pawns to back off. "Music." He slammed a kick into the boy, and with a melodia, challenging sneer asked where that terrifying pressure Ji-sun had shown earlier had vanished to. The protagonist, then, collapsed to the asphalt, his face, music, visibly battered and swollen. One of the aggressors, seeing Jizan broken, with murderous intent, the lackey seized a jagged rock. Turning to his leader, he vowed to make the wretch scream in agony. I never liked his face anyway, he spat. This ends now. But before he could strike, the boss intervened. With a swift kick, he knocked the stone from the foolish subordinate's hand. Do you have a death wish? Lowering yourself to use a weapon on trash. The boss seized Jizan by the collar, dragging him eye to level. Why do you accept these blows? He hissed. You seem to enjoy the pain. What darkness are you hiding behind those dead eyes? He declared the beating would continue until the truth surfaced. This torture won't end until you show me your true fangs. Prove your worth. The traitor who had sold Jizan out cowered in the shadows, witnessing the brutality. Fear gripped his heart. This wasn't just schoolyard bullying. This gang was on a completely different level of violence than Taksu's crew. Just then he spotted a figure approaching. It was Ara, walking straight into the lion's den. At that exact moment, the phone in the boss's hand buzzed. A single message flashed on the screen. Let Jizan go. The boss's eyes scanned the area like a predator seeking prey. There. He spotted the girl standing firm with her phone in hand. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. Well, Jizan, perhaps now you'll find the fire to fight back. He gestured toward the girl. Since your little girlfriend has arrived to save you. The mockery dripped from his voice. Maybe love will awaken your sleeping strength. With a curt nod, the boss signaled his dogs. Bring her here. He waved the phone, taunting her to approach. Come closer, sweetheart. As she frantically typed another plea, a thug flanked her from the blind spot. He seized her arm, his eyes gleaming with lust. Damn, she's a beauty, he leered. She struggled to pull away, but his grip was iron. He yanked her violently. Where do you think you're going, princess? The traitor watching from behind the tree trembled in cowardice. Seeing his crush in danger, he wanted to scream, but his legs refused to move. He remained frozen, a spectator to the horror. The thug dragged the terrified girl into the center of the circle. Look at him, he sneered. Look at your boyfriend's ruined face. He shoved her toward the boss. Jizan and Ara locked eyes in a suspended moment of silence. Memories of their brief, awkward encounters flashed by. Now she stood there, bruised and trembling with fear. The sight of a beautiful victim excited the gang members. The chubby enforcer stepped forward, laughing. Did you come to die with him? Do you want to be this loser's woman that badly? Sorry, but he's a little busy bleeding right now. The mockery was relentless. Jizan is a frustrating punching bag, so we're teaching him a lesson. Ignoring the taunts, the girl desperately typed a response. She showed the screen, her hands shaking. He is just a friend. Please let him go. Her plea was innocent, but in this world, innocence is a weakness. The boss tilted his head, amused. Why don't you use your voice? He leaned in closer. Why the silence? What is your name? No answer came. Only the wind howled through the tense atmosphere. A realization struck him. Ah, I see. Silence. The gang erupted into cruel laughter, mocking the pair. Look at them. They only talk through screens. What a freak show, a mute couple made in heaven. The boss's expression darkened. I don't care how you do it. Whoever makes them scream first gets a reward. Break their silence. Make them beg. The order unleashed the wolves. The chubby thug grinned. Does the girl count for the reward too? The boss nodded. Anyone. Instantly, the pack closed in on the girl. Since she can't speak, she can't say no, right? Their hands grabbed at her. They pulled her hair, twisted her arms. Jizan stood motionless, his eyes shadowed. The boss watched him closely, waiting for the snap. What will you do now? He whispered. Will you keep hiding while they break her? The harassment escalated. One thug grabbed her jaw, forcing her head up. Open your mouth, scream for us. The tension reached its breaking point. K-bam. Suddenly, a body flew through the air. The thug harassing the girl collapsed unconscious before he hit the ground. Jizan stood there, his aura completely changed. As he turned, another thug swung a fist. You bastard. Before the thug could blink, a counterpunch obliterated his consciousness. He crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. The boss's eyes widened in ecstasy. Finally, the beast wakes up. Jizan shoved the remaining attackers away from Ara. He was no longer a victim. He was a storm of violence. The girl stared, paralyzed by the sudden transformation. The entire gang roared and charged at once. A foolish mistake. Jizan moved like a phantom. He caught a leg mid-air, swinging the attacker like a human weapon into the others. Another lunged. Jizan seized him by the hair. Smash. Smash. He drove his fist into the man's face with terrifying precision. A kick came from the side. Jizan didn't even flinch. He caught the limb sweeping the aggressor's standing leg. The thug hit the pavement hard. Then the tank arrived. Daishik, the massive enforcer, charged like a raging bull. I'll kill you. Meanwhile, the man with the trapped leg screamed for mercy. Crack. Jason silenced him with a heel to the chin. Coldly, he stepped over the body to face the charging giant. Weaving through the attack, Jason moved like a phantom. He used his enemy's leg as a launch pad, driving a brutal knee straight into Daishik's skull. But the assault didn't end there. With lethal precision, a devastating stomp crashed into his face. The boss watched with a predator's grin, realizing this diamond in the rough was overflowing with raw talent. Meanwhile, the clash between Jason and Daishik reached its boiling point. Daishik, humiliated and missing a tooth, grappled him with hysterical strength, rage blinding his senses. But Jason was calm. He raised his arms high, raining down razor-sharp elbows like the judgment of heaven. Music, smashing into his eyes. Again and again, steel met bone, shattering Daishik's remaining teeth and sending him spiraling into the dark abyss of unconsciousness. The crowd stood frozen in terror. The immovable object had just been destroyed. Jason turned his fury on the rest of the pack. One by one, they crumbled before his martial prowess, unable to withstand the storm. The gang leader observed silently, his interest piqued. This boy wasn't just a fighter. He was a monster in human skin, far exceeding all expectations. Suddenly, a desperate grunt grabbed A-reum by the throat, hoping to use a hostage to halt Jason's rampage. But that was a fatal mistake. A buried memory clawed its way to the surface. A woman in a cap screaming in helplessness, begging for salvation. Jason's eyes went dark with an ancient cold rage. He stalked toward them, ignoring the thug's trembling warnings. An ambush came from behind, but with a single dismissive back elbow, Jason crushed the sneak attacker. He launched himself forward like a cannonball, closing the distance to A-reum instantly. The thug opened his mouth to scream, paralyzed by Jason's killing intent, but his voice was silenced by a catastrophic punch. As he hit the floor, Jason mounted him like a demon, raining down a merciless barrage of strikes, losing himself in the violence. Music, the gang leader finally stepped in, his voice cutting through the chaos, ordering Jason to cease. He tossed the stolen phone back, a reward for proving his worth. The boss then extended a dark invitation to join his crew, declaring that he always claimed what he desired. But Jason, still drowning in adrenaline, ignored the offer and turned his bloodlust toward the leader. The boss, genuinely unnerved by those dead eyes, asked why he was still posturing when the war was over. He demanded Jason stand down, questioning the beast glaring back at him. Jason gave no answer, launching a strike with lethal intent. However, the boss shifted into a master stance, slipping past the punch with terrifying speed, leaving Jason wide open. The boss drove a counterpunch straight into Jason's chin, launching him through the air. Jason crashed down, his consciousness fading to black. The boss dusted himself off, reminding the boy that he had been warned. The young wolf lay defeated, motionless in the silence. The gang leader advised him to meditate on the offer, promising to return for an answer once the boy woke up. He dropped the phone on the fallen warrior and signaled his retreat, his subordinates scrambling to follow. Who the hell was that maniac? The chubby underling asked, trembling as they descended. Is the boss seriously thinking of recruiting that silent psycho? He shuddered, adding, "Did you see his eyes? It was like looking at a demon." The leader, however, was lost in thought, replaying that final exchange. He had dodged, yes, but the boy's reaction speed was inhuman. He had actually managed to graze him. That boy possessed the instincts of a natural-born killer, a talent that couldn't be taught. This only fueled his obsession with leashing that wild beast. Back at the battleground, Jason and A-reum were left alone in the Caltre's aftermath. He collapsed onto the bench, his stamina completely drained. A-reum looked at him with frantic worry. Without a word, she spun around and sprinted away to find help. At that moment, the phone buzzed, signaling the arrival of a digital lifeline. It was a message from her saying she was running to the pharmacy and would be back in a heartbeat. Jason stared at the screen, the weight of guilt crushing him. She was in danger because of his existence. He made a heavy choice, leaving the phone behind as he vanished into the shadows. A student watching from the dark was shaking in pure terror. He realized that if Jason had fought one-on-one from the start, he would have massacred the entire gang effortlessly. A legendary fighter had finally arrived at their school. Walking past the bench, the observer spotted the abandoned device and realized it was Jason's link to the world. Reading the notifications, he pieced together that A-reum was the sender. It was obvious she held deep affection for that monster. Then music, he saw her silhouette in the distance, running back with supplies. Panic set in. He stood at a moral crossroads, but fear won out, acting like the coward he chose flight over honor. When A-reum arrived, breathless, she found only an empty bench and silence. The coward didn't stop running until he was safe. As he fled, the stolen phone in his hand vibrated again. Is greater than is greater than. Music is greater than is greater than. It was A-reum. Her texts frantic, saying she had the medicine, asking why he had disappeared, and praying that his wounds weren't fatal. Sunung Men was. Sung Min stood frozen, stunned by Ji-seon's icy indifference. The girl was desperate with worry, yet Ji-seon hadn't even glanced at the device. A storm of conflict raged within him. Notifications flooded the screen, her name, her class, a plea for connection. She thanked him for the help, her words dripping with hope for a future together. Sung Min felt the crushing weight of temptation. Decisions. Should he ghost her or play the role of the hero? For a brief, intoxicating moment, he considered becoming Ji-seon. He gave in to the impulse. Miles away, a notification lit up the girl's phone, leaving her breathless with shock. A reply had come. A simple monosyllabic, yes. The gears of fate began to turn. The next day, Sung Min unveiled the secret footage. Watch this, he whispered to his friend. Music. On the screen, Ji-seon moved like a war god, dismantling an entire gang single-handedly. His friend's eyes went wide. Wait, isn't that the guy you called a walking disaster? Sung Min nodded, still reeling from witnessing the carnage live. This is insane, the friend muttered. Ji-seon is going to be a legend. Bitterness welled up in Sung Min's chest. His goddess Han A-reum already had eyes for that bastard. And seeing Ji-seon ignore her only fueled Sung Min's jealousy. He was lost in a maze of envy. While Sung Min drowned in dark thoughts, his friend's eyes lit up with greed. Music. If we upload this, we'll hit millions of views. I'm taking it. The friend snatched the phone and bolted. Hey, give it back. Sung Min chased him down the hall, panic rising in his throat. Blinded by the chase, he slammed into a wall of muscle. A tie clip clattered to the floor. Sung Min gasped, realizing his mistake too late. He had collided with Jin Wu, the second-year tyrant, the number 2 predator of Baekdong High. The air turned heavy with killing intent. Terrified, Sung Min scrambled to retrieve the clip. I'll fix it, I'm sorry. His hands trembled uncontrollably as he tried to replace it. Asterisk, smack times, a callous hand struck his face. Jin Wu turned away like a king dismissing a peasant. Know your place, his enforcer sneered. The pressure vanished as they walked away. Are you alive? His friend asked. Sung Min, humiliated and throbbing, snapped back. This is your fault. You should be grateful, the friend whispered, pale-faced. Surviving a slap from that monster is a miracle. That guy is unhinged. They're all monsters in this school, he concluded. Music. But the friend quickly pointed to a new development across the courtyard. Yena was fussing over Ji-seon, asking about the bandages covering his music battle-worn face. Sung Min felt a vein pop in irritation. The protagonist's aura was attracting everyone. Yena and Han A-reum looked at him as if he were the center of the universe. Speaking of the devil, Han A-reum walked by. Sung Min tried to intervene, offering a sympathetic smile, but he was nothing more than air to her. She didn't even break stride. The truth was bitter. To reach the queen, he had to be near the king. He needed Ji-seon. While Sung Min plotted his social climb, his friend lurked in the shadows, uploading the brutal fight footage to the internet. Elsewhere, the school's cruelty continued. Bullies circled Go-min, mocking his shaved head. They had drawn a grotesque face on his skull. You look much better now, they sneered. Go-min lowered his head in shame, but the torment was far from over. From now on, one bully commanded you only walk backward. Fear paralyzed him. To disobey was to invite a beating. Like a puppet on strings, Go-min obeyed. He stepped blindly into the void, guided by their malicious laughter. Suddenly, the floor disappeared. Gravity took hold and he tumbled backward toward the stairs, bracing for a bone-breaking impact. But impact never came. A hand of steel grabbed him. Ji-seon had defied gravity, catching the boy before tragedy could strike. Yena, music standing beside the protagonist, gasped. Are you all right? But then the drawing on the back of his head caught her eye. She snorted, trying to suppress a laugh, even as Go-min explained his bullying ordeal. She quickly apologized, composing herself. Ji-seon, however, didn't smile. His eyes were cold, assessing the cruelty. Go-min offered a silent prayer of thanks to his savior. Meanwhile, in the coliseum of the school gym, the underground fight club was in full swing. Two students clashed, while the crowd roared. It was a spectacle of violence. Money changed hands as bets were placed on the gladiators in the center. Jin Wu sat on his throne, bored out of his mind until a lackey shoved a phone in his face. Boss, look at this. It was the video. Ji-seon's awakened power on full display. The view count was skyrocketing with every heartbeat. Music. Is this guy one of ours? Jin Wu asked, eyes narrowing. The uniform matches someone confirmed. The predator's interest was piqued. The skill was undeniable, even from a distance. If a fighter of this caliber was hiding in their territory, the balance of power would shift. Jin Wu stood up, his voice booming across the gym. Who knows the transfer student, the one who fights like a demon? A voice from the crowd spoke up. He's in the next class, class 5. The quiet one. There's a rumor he put Taksu in the hospital, another whispered. But nobody dared to confirm it until now. A savage grin spread across Jin Wu's face. He beat Taksu. This wasn't just a student. This was prey worth hunting. Find out everything he ordered his scouts. This guy. He might actually entertain me. The hunt had begun. By lunchtime, the dynamic had shifted. Gomin, desperate for protection, latched onto Jiseon like a shadow the moment class ended. Gomin bought some bread, hoping to share a meal with the new transfer student. Even though our silent protagonist gave no answer, Gomin just tagged along anyway, promising to share lunch from time to time. But when they reached the rooftop, Sunung-min was already there waiting. However, seeing Goemon sticking to Jason like glue left him completely baffled. The confusion was palpable in the air. While one said he was waiting for Jason, the other insisted he was the designated lunch buddy. It was a standoff for the quiet boy's attention. When Sunung-min turned to speak with the protagonist, his eyes caught the markings on the back of Goemon's head. A laugh escaped him, calling him the class clown, but Goemon's expression remained stone cold. He wasn't joking. He explained that these marks were the brutal scars of school violence, a reality that couldn't be erased by simply hiding it. You cannot just run from the truth, he declared, asking Sunung-min to snap a picture. Baffled by the request, the boy captured the moment regardless. But just as the shutter clicked, something happened. Jason's phone, currently stashed in Sunung-min's pocket, buzzed with life. Sensing an opportunity, Sunung-min drifted away. He urged them to start their meal, claiming he would return in a heartbeat. Slyly, he pulled the device from his pocket. It was a text from A-reum wishing Jason a pleasant lunch. But in a twist of colossal narcissism, Sunung-min thought the message was for him. He texted back a warm reply, completely unaware of the chaos he was causing. Meanwhile, the girl's heart fluttered, believing her crush had responded. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Ja-min kicked the door open. Sunung-min, trembling in fear, stammered out a question. But the bully ignored him, marching straight toward Jason. He had heard rumors that the silent target frequented the roof during lunch. And the rumors were true. Closing the distance with a predatory grin, he shoved his phone in Jason's face, displaying the viral fight video. "Is this you?" he sneered. Nearby, Sunung-min froze in horror, realizing his reckless upload had summoned a demon. Goemon asked, what was going on? Ja-min demanded a live demonstration to verify the gossip. But Jason, he didn't even grant the bully a glance. That silence was the ultimate insult. Rage boiled over in Ja-min's veins. Fists clenched, he roared, "Are you deaf?" He swung a haymaker aimed at the boy's head, but Jason simply leaned back. An effortless dodge. Ja-min unleashed a flurry of blows, but he was punching nothing but air. His fury skyrocketed. "If you won't stand up, I'll crush you while you sit," he screamed. He threw his weight into a final strike, but Jason vanished from the path again. Then, with surgical precision, a low kick to the shin. The impact shattered Ja-min's balance instantly. Gravity took hold, and for a split second, he was suspended in helplessness. Crash! He face-planted directly into the wooden bench. A guttural scream of agony echoed across the rooftop. As the bully writhed on the floor, Jason looked down at him. No anger, no pity, just cold, absolute contempt. Ja-min's face was a ruin of blood and broken cartilage. But looking up, he didn't see a student. He felt a monstrous aura crushing the air around him. Terror. Primal terror seized his heart. He scrambled away, fleeing the rooftop as if the devil himself were chasing him. The remaining duo watched the dust settle. Goemon, eyes wide, turned to his friend. What exactly are you? This wasn't human movement. Sunung-min finally dropped the bomb. It was him. He's the one who sent Tu to the hospital. Goemon looked at Jason like he was seeing a god. But the celebration was cut short. This is bad, Sunung-min warned. Ja-min isn't just a bully. He's a hound for Kim Jin Wu. Kim Jin Wu didn't just fight. He recruited. Once he smelled talent, he dragged strong fighters into his twisted underground battles. And now, Jason was the prey. Rumor had it that some fought voluntarily for cash, but for others it was a trap. A guy like Jason could make a fortune, Sunung-min mused. Goemon snapped immediately. What kind of garbage are you spewing? Since Jason remained silent as the grave, Goemon stepped up. He refuses. I'm rejecting that offer right now on his behalf. He knew Jason wasn't a brawler at heart. He didn't crave violence, or the vanity of showing off his power. Striking a pose, Goemon declared himself the voice of Jason. As his newly appointed best friend, he claimed full diplomatic immunity. Sunung-min rolled his eyes. Are you two even really friends? Goemon nodded vigorously. A bond forged in steel. Back in the classroom, peace was impossible. Jason's return triggered a tidal wave of whispers. The video had spread like wildfire. Students shoved phones in his face. Is it really you? Just give us a nod. They treated him like a zoo animal. Goman jumped into the fray. Back off. If you want to talk to the king, you go through his prime minister first. The class groaned at his antics, swarming closer. But then, bang! The classroom door slammed open, silencing the room instantly. Jin Wu strode in. The air turned heavy. He stood at the front, his eyes scanning the prey. Where is the transfer student? Fear paralyzed the class. No one dared to point. But Goman, standing loyally beside Jason, became a beacon of attention. Jin Wu locked eyes with the pair. He took a step forward. Instinctively, Goman stepped in front of Jason, a human shield. Move, the tyrant commanded. Swallowing his fear, Goman stood his ground. I am his representative. You speak to me first. A low growl came from Jin Wu's massive henchman. And who exactly do you think you are, little insect? However, Goman stood firm as the gatekeeper, insisting all business go through him. The thug didn't care for protocol, delivering a stinging slap across Goman's face. Are you brain dead? He sneered. Goman hit the floor, rolling over to reveal a bizarre secret, a second face sketched in marker right on the back of his neck. The goon hoisted him up by his collar like a rag doll, laughing. This guy is a walking comedy act. Suddenly, Jason rose from his seat, propelled by an overwhelming internal pressure. Jin Wu smirked. So, you're the monster who crushed Jamin's nose. Met with silence, the leader flicked a sleek business card toward him. Ever heard of my guild? My lackey failed to recruit you, so the king had to descend to this dump to invite you. Personally. Sensing the boy's cold indifference, Jin Wu shifted tactics, his voice dripping with arrogance. Do you like money? But Goman scrambled up, shouting, back off, Jason has zero interest in your fight clubs. Know your place, trash. Fed up with the interruption, Jin Wu unleashed a devastating kick to Goman's chest, sending him crashing violently into the desks. Chairs scattered as Goman collapsed in a heap. Jin Wu loomed over him like a predator. Why do weaklings always bark the loudest? He sneered. Why insert yourself into a conversation between wolves? He ordered him to shut his mouth, then began stomping on the helpless boy on the road floor. But as the blows rained down, a hand clamped onto his shoulder. Jason made him turn. The air crackled as they stared at each other. Let go, Jin Wu hissed. Get your filthy hand off me. I detest it when anything touches my body. But Jason didn't flinch. His grip tightened like an iron vice, shocking the arrogant recruiter. The massive henchman charged forward, roaring. Get your dirty hands off the boss. Jason moved like a phantom, easily dodging the clumsy strike and retaliating with a brutal knee to the skull. Blood sprayed as the thug howled in agony. The brute crashed through the furniture, but his pride wouldn't let him stay down. He snatched up a chair, eyes bloodshot with rage. You're dead meat, Jason. But with feline grace, Jason vaulted into the air, dodging the projectile. He landed atop a desk, seamlessly transitioning into a counterattack. He surged forward, delivering a lightning-fast kick that buried his opponent into the floor as if he were an insect. Jason stood high upon the table, emanating a chilling aura that proved to the entire class the legends of his strength were real. Humiliated, the bulky student roared, hefting a table over his head like a beast, vowing to murder Jason. Suddenly, the classroom door slid open. The teacher froze, taking in the chaos before demanding an explanation, scolding them for the brawl and asking why Jason was perched on the furniture. Jin Wu shifted masks instantly, claiming it was just some roughhousing. He turned to the battered Go-man, sneering, I'll be in touch, agent. Make sure you secure that meeting with Jason. He strolled to the exit, disrespectfully, patting the teacher's shoulder as he passed. Class is in session, teach. Later, in the safety of the hallway, Go-man recounted the epic clash to Sun Min, describing the scene as straight out of an action movie where Jason was untouchable. Sun Min bit his lip, envious he missed the event. Live. But why is Jason still in there? Go-man sighed. The teacher held him back. Even in self-defense, violence on school grounds spells trouble. While the duo speculated about their classmate's fate, the teacher poured Jason a cup of bitter green tea in the faculty room. It was a mature flavor for a bitter situation, serving as a bridge for their talk. The atmosphere here is a far cry from your previous academy, isn't it? The teacher mused, breaking the silence. He revealed a hidden truth. When your father announced your transfer to this hellhole, I fought against it. I feared you wouldn't survive the adaptation, especially with your condition. He looked at the silent boy. Yet he trusted me to guide you. The teacher leaned back, memories flooding his mind. The last time I saw you was 4 years ago. You were just a child in elementary school. He vividly recalled watching the boy, training his movements sharp and overflowing with raw energy. Your father introduced you with such pride back then. He smiled nostalgically. I was impressed that he had transformed his own home into a dojo just for you. He remembered celebrating with drinks that night, convinced that Jason was a prodigy in the making. I don't know what tragedy occurred in those missing years to bring you to such a wretched place, he admitted. And while I've asked the staff for leniency, out there in the jungle, you must face the wolves alone. He concluded with a piercing look. Your father didn't forge your body just for combat. He believed that one day your spirit would be strong enough to break that silence. A sudden downpour caught the students off guard as they left. Tiangmin frowned, realizing his concern now lay elsewhere. Jin Wu had hit a wall with no clear path to draw out the elusive Jizen. But destiny intervened when the phone he had stolen buzzed with life. It was A A-reum asking about an umbrella. Confused by the sudden inquiry, he pressed for a reason, and her answer sparked a chain reaction. She was waiting in front of the stationery store. Seung-min moved out his mind, already tortured by the image of her holding an umbrella. He knew she had one prepared for Jizen, and seeing her there confirmed his worst fears. Consumed by a storm of doubt and burning jealousy, he froze. He couldn't bear the thought of them sharing that small, intimate space under the rain. Then, a desperate strategy formed in his mind. He rushed to grab the boy. He had to execute this plan immediately. A A-reum waited in the drizzle until the sound of footsteps signaled Seung-min and Jizen's arrival. Feigning total surprise, Seung-min loudly remarked that he too was without protection from the rain. Seeing A A-reum, he acted the fool, pretending not to know why she was there. The girl reached into her inventory, pulling out a spare umbrella, offering it to Jizen with a shy hope. Seung-min's plan teetered on the brink of failure, but he refused to surrender. Even seeing that her eyes and heart were locked onto Jizen, he intercepted the item. He snatched the umbrella, thanking her with a forced gentleness. He quickly fabricated a lie, claiming he and Jizen had a quest at the new gaming center on Main Street. Seizing the momentum, he invited her to join their party. Meanwhile, Go-ammon sprinted home, desperate to escape the downpour. But in the shadows of an alley, two predators lay in wait. It was Jen nursing a nose broken by Jizen and the burly thug who had been humiliated in the classroom. Terror gripped Go-ammon as he stammered, asking what they wanted. Jen sneered, declaring that since Go-ammon called himself the boy's agent, he would carry a message. The two assailants unleashed a brutal beatdown, every blow a warning meant for Jizen. Jen vowed they would meet again and demanded the trembling boy repeat his words. Through the pain, Go-ammon gasped that the message was for Jizen to participate. One of the thugs struck him again, ordering him to deliver the message with proper respect. Tears streaming down his face, the boy swore he would talk to Jizen. The aggressor leaned in, threatening him with the quick access penalty, a code word for death. At that critical moment, Jin Wu emerged from the darkness. He stepped in, telling the aggressor to ease off the pressure. Jin Wu pulled out a business card, handing it to the battered boy like a summons from hell. He instructed the young messenger to tell Jizen he was welcome to enter the Combat Kennel. The three villains departed, leaving the boy broken and abandoned in the rain. Back at the newly opened gaming club, Seung-min was locked in digital combat with our protagonist. While Seung-min played with fiery enthusiasm, the protagonist seemed bored by the mortal struggle. Believing his skills were god-tier, Seung-min tried his absolute hardest to impress A A-reum. But while he thought himself the hunter, Jizen scored a point against him. The boy tried to mask his shock, acting as if it were all part of the plan. He returned to the game with a renewed thirst for victory, his eyes blazing. But the protagonist played with terrifying ease, scoring another point without even trying. Stunned by his friend's hidden power, Seung-min declared he would take the gloves off. No more mercy, he cried. Yet the match ended in a slaughter. A score of 13-0. Jizen had not allowed his opponent to land a single strike. Desperate Seung-min invited A A-reum to play, hoping she would taste Jizen's cold indifference. He prayed she would see his cruelty and be disgusted. The match began, but the atmosphere shifted instantly. Soft touches, a gentle pace Jizen was holding back. Then the impossible happened. A A-reum scored her first point. Seung-min watched in fury, wondering where the ruthless god of war had gone. The girl, fully immersed in the game, scored yet another point. Next, the party moved to the claw machines where Seung-min believed his luck would turn. But after several failed attempts, he begged A A-reum to wait. Confident he would secure a prize, he tried once more and failed miserably. Rage bubbled up. He concluded the machine was a scam, a trap for fools. Beside him, with the calm of a grandmaster, Jizen claimed a bear on his first try. Holding two bears of different colors, Jizen handed one to each of his friends like rare loot. Seung-min, humiliated, thanked him, wondering if there was anything this monster couldn't do. Annoyed by his losing streak, Seung-min decided to play his final trump card. He dragged them to a karaoke bar. Confident in his vocal cords, he belted out a song, hoping to pierce A A-reum's heart. But what he delivered was not a serenade, but a comedy show. A A-reum ignored the noise, clutching the plushie she received from her crush. At the peak of his disastrous performance, Seung-min choked on his own hubris. He ran out of the room, frantically searching for water. With Seungmin gone, Jizen and A-reum were left alone, immersed in a heavy silence. A-reum took her phone, texting a shy thank you to Jizen for the bear. Suddenly her phone rang, breaking the spell. Seeing her father's name on the screen, her expression shifted to pure nervousness. She stood up and fled in haste. But as she passed through the door, she collided with a stranger. Coffee exploded everywhere, staining the man's clothes. The man roared at the girl, reprimanding her for her carelessness, his anger flaring up. The karaoke bar became his battlefield. Bursting with confidence, he belted out notes as if his life depended on it, praying to capture A-reum's heart. But what he unleashed was not a melody, but a tragedy. It was a comedy show, pure and simple. Meanwhile, A-reum was lost in her own world, tightly clutching the plushie, gifted to her by her secret crush. Just as the song reached its screeching climax, Seungmin choked on his own passion and fled the room, desperately seeking water. With the comic relief gone, a heavy silence descended. It was just Jason and A-reum now. The air crackled with tension. Shyly, she typed a message, thanking Jibon for the precious bear. But suddenly buzz, her phone rang. Seeing her father's name on the screen, a cold wave of anxiety washed over her. Panic set in. She scrambled to escape, rushing for the exit. But in her haste, disaster struck. She collided violently with a man in the doorway, sending his hot coffee flying everywhere. The stranger exploded in rage, berating her for her carelessness. But elsewhere, a different storm was brewing. A rival. The thug's fury boiled over when she refused to apologize. Seungmin returned to the scene, trembling as he tried to mediate the situation. "Is this trash your girlfriend?" the bully sneered. "We are just classmates," the boy stammered. Disgusted, the man poured the scalding coffee right over the girl's head. As expected, the spineless Seungmin froze in fear. But then, Ji-sun stepped forward and clamped his hand onto the aggressor's arm like a steel vice. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" the thug gasped. Our protagonist swept the man's legs, slamming him into the floor like a sack of garbage. When the lackey tried to ambush Ji-sun, he was met with a devastating punch that laid him out cold. A-reum watched with wide eyes as giants fell before her. Ji-sun seized her hand, pulling her up, and the two vanished into the city to escape the chaos. Seungmin was left behind, and when the thug demanded answers, the coward turned tail and fled to avoid the consequences. He clutched his backpack and teddy bear like a terrified child, and music ran. Scrambling onto the street, he spotted the pair descending the stairs. He screamed, trying to get their attention, but his voice found no purchase in the air. They simply walked on. Watching from the shadows, Seungmin felt a bitter envy at the perfect harmony they displayed music together. Ji-sun was the hero rescuing the damsel, while Seungmin saw himself only as a pathetic extra in their story. To the girl, he was nothing more than a background NPC. Head down, he trudged home, crushed by his own weakness, when a familiar voice called out. It was Go-woon, crumpled in a corner, beaten black and blue. The boy, music, approached the broken figure. Tears streaming down his face, Go-woon wailed about his own incompetence, crying that he wasn't worthy of being Ji-sun's messenger. Seungmin asked if Jin Woo's crew had done this. Go-woon nodded, admitting his terror had paralyzed him, failing to force Ji-sun into the underground dogfight. Seungmin realized Go-woon was a mirror image of himself. They were both spineless losers, living in fear. He hoisted the battered boy up and dragged him toward safety. "What happens to us now?" Go-woon whimpered. Seungmin muttered that if Ji-sun truly considered them friends, he would save them. Meanwhile, the atmosphere shifted. Ji-sun gently let go of A-reum's arm, and they walked side by side. She opened an umbrella, shielding them from the falling rain, creating a world just for two. Yena, who was nearby, froze as she witnessed this intimate scene. Seeing their closeness, she was left speechless. "Is something wrong?" her friend asked. Yena quickly masked her shock. "It is nothing." Her friend dragged her away as the group waited. But Yena walked on the image of those two together burning in her mind. At that exact moment, A-reum's phone buzzed with frantic notifications, but she ignored the outside world, continuing her path. Arriving at her apartment complex, she stopped and typed a message. She texted Ji-sun that this was her home, handed him the umbrella, and bid a shy farewell. She dashed inside, heart-pounding, euphoric from having flirting back thus, shared this precious moment with her crush. As Ji-sun turned to leave, a sudden touch on his shoulder stopped him. Turning around, he saw her phone screen glowing with the words, "Thank you so much for today." A-reum stood there, beaming, holding the device like a treasure. The girl hurried back to the elevator, watching Ji-sun's retreating back until the doors closed. But her joy was shattered by the metallic click of a lighter. A man stood in the corner, smoke curling around him as he glared at her. "What is this pathetic display?" he sneered. A-reum lowered her head, trembling in silence. The next day, back at high school, Sungmin raged at Go-woon for betraying their only hope. The battered boy was drowning in regret. "I deserve to die," he sobbed. Sungmin continued his verbal assault, twisting the knife to ensure their survival meant using Ji-sun. "When is Ji-sun supposed to fight?" he demanded. Music of the so-called messenger. Go-woon stuttered that it was Saturday night at 9 p.m. at the gym. He added that if Ji-sun did not appear, he would be slaughtered by the gang. The two desperate cowards cornered Ji-sun, pleading their case and explaining that blood would spill without his help, but the protagonist simply turned and walked away. Left in the dust, Go-woon collapsed in despair, convinced their doom was sealed. Saturday night arrived. The fight club was a cauldron of violence, combatants exchanging bone-crushing blows. The crowd roared with bloodlust at every impact. Sungmin and Go-woon stood frozen, terrified by the brutality unfolding within the school walls, praying their savior would appear. The mob was euphoric, feeding off the intensity of the duel. Punches flew in a blur of motion between the competitors, and with every opening, the crowd screamed for blood, urging the opponent to finish it. Feeding off the crowd's frenzy, the fighter struck with lethal precision. High above, a mysterious figure watched the carnage through a private surveillance feed. Finally, the undercard match ended. It was time for the main event. The man leaned forward, intrigued if Ji-sun would actually step into the ring. To the world, he seemed a gentle boy. But this man knew a monster hid beneath that quiet exterior. The ultimate fighter. Music. The teacher weighed his options, carefully bet on Lee Tae-young or the newcomer Ji-sun. Despite the mystery surrounding the transfer student's abilities, Tae-young was the safe bet. That boy was a rabid hunting dog. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Picking up, he received news of a student stalled at the gate, refusing to answer questions. A smirk crossed the teacher's lips. He knew exactly who it was. "Let him in," he commanded. Peering through the office window, his eyes locked onto the figure below. The young man walked with a heavy burden. The teacher chuckled at the sight. Commendable courage, he thought. The courage of a lamb walking to the slaughter. Meanwhile, the undercard match concluded, declaring Min-chu the victor. But Jin Wu didn't care. He demanded to know where Ji-sun was. The main event was moments away. His thugs cornered the other students, terrorizing them for information. If he doesn't show, you two will take his place in the ring against Tae-young. The threat hung in the air until the gym doors creaked open. Every head turned. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Standing there, silhouetted by the light, was Ji-sun, the transfer student. Disbelief washed over the crowd. Even his tormented friends stared in shock. He had actually come. He had come to save them. Jin Wu grinned like a predator. Right on time, just like a ghost. "I've been dying for this moment." He announced the stakes loudly. If Ji-sun wins, the payout is massive. Yet barely 10% of the crowd dared to bet on the underdog. Jin Wu leaned in, whispering that he too had wagered on Ji-sun. In his eyes, this wasn't a boy. It was a bloodthirsty beast waiting to be unleashed. "Show me what you've got," he sneered. The two main fighters stepped into the circle, locking eyes, scanning for weakness. Tension crackled in the air. Tae-young slowly removed his headphones, sizing up his prey. "So you're the new guy." He tossed the headset to a spectator. "Play that track," he ordered. Ripping off his shirt, he flexed, signaling the start of the violence. It is showtime. The combatants took their stances. The bell rang in their minds. They clashed. Strikes flew, but Ji-sun was like smoke. He dodged every hit effortlessly. Bam! He fired back a counter-blocked just in time. They danced around the ring, testing limits. But amidst the flurry of fists and kicks, only Tae-young was taking damage. A few exchanges in, and the realization hit Tae-young like a truck. Compared to every punk he had crushed before, Ji-sun was on a different level. A chill ran down his spine. Fear? No, he refused to be intimidated. But the moment his focus wavered, crack. A fist connected with his jaw. Ji-sun exploited the split-second opening when Tae-young's guard dropped. The transfer student didn't hesitate. He unleashed a merciless combo, a storm of blows, giving his opponent zero room to breathe. Ji-sun's friends cheered with every impact. But Tae-young's rage was building. Why was this guy's face so empty? His expression hadn't changed once. Tae-young was being reduced to a human punching bag. Watching the feed, the teacher frowned. What is wrong with that kid? His investment was failing. The crowd grew restless. Tae-young wasn't attacking. He was surviving. Turn up the volume, they screamed, hoping the beat would wake the beast. As one, they began to chant. The name echoed off the walls. The music pounded, fueling the crowd's bloodlust. But for Ji-sun, that voice on the speakers was hauntingly familiar. His movements froze. Distracted, he took the first solid hit to the face. The crowd roared. The tide was turning. "What song is this?" someone shouted. "It's Ella Khan," came the reply. "The hottest girl group out right now." A memory surfaced in Jisun's mind. A girl from his past. She had once told him, "When we debut, you'll be a star's boyfriend." The flashback washed over him. She had looked at him with uncertain eyes back then, asking how he felt about her dreams. "The agency promised our debut," she had said, desperate for reassurance. "I just have to follow the rules. Can I do it?" While his friends called him to leave, he had turned to her. "Music." He spoke with absolute conviction. "Regardless of the path you choose to me, it will always be the right answer." The words had lifted the weight from her soul. She had smiled a tragic beauty. "Thank you. You are the only one I can trust. My true sanctuary." Snap. The roar of the crowd dragged him back to the violent reality. Because of that memory, his guard was wide open. Blow after blow rained down on him. Music. His friends watched in horror. Why did he stop fighting? Why the sudden lethargy? Taeyoung's ego returned instantly. He underestimated Ji-sun again, thinking the earlier skill was just caution. "I've got this." Taeyoung felt the victory in his grasp. The audience was euphoric, chanting his name like a war cry. But the music, that voice echoing from the radio, it was paralyzing Ji-sun. He was being pushed back, step by step. His friends were frantic. It's the song they realized the trigger. The loud music was destroying his focus. They sprinted toward the sound system. "Turn it down," they pleaded. The DJ sneered. "Mind your own business, losers." "He can't concentrate with this noise," some men argued desperately. The bullies just laughed in their faces. "If the quiet kid can't handle a little noise, he deserves to lose." "That was it," Goman snapped. He snatched the speaker and ran for his life. Despite their desperate attempts to intervene, he managed to silence the music. But within the protagonist's mind, a torture chamber of memories began to play. The cruel flashback replayed the moment she shattered his heart, declaring, "I no longer wish to be part of your life." She announced that from this moment on, their paths would never cross again, claiming she was suffocating in their relationship. She turned her cold back on him, leaving him screaming into the void. He had howled her name in desperation until security guards dragged him away like a common criminal. While Ji-sun drowned in the abyss of his trauma, Taeyoung continued to rain down punishment. The outcome seemed etched in stone. Victory was within reach. The opponent needed only a few more strikes to shatter Ji-sun completely. And he did not hesitate, delivering a barrage of brutal impacts. Ji-sun crumbled to his knees, his physical pain nothing compared to the face of the girl haunting his soul. As Taeyoung prepared, the executioner's strike, aiming to end this massacre, the entire arena believed the curtain had fallen. However, the moment Ji-sun's senses detected the incoming kick, he dodged with the agility of a phantom. His mind snapped back into focus, and ancient adrenaline flooded his veins, propelling him toward his enemy. He unleashed a devastating punch squarely into Taeyoung's face, a blow so powerful it sent him crashing into the floor tiles. The crowd gasped, paralyzed by the sudden explosion of violence. Ji-sun did not pause. He drove his foot into his opponent's face again. The rival spat broken teeth and blood terror, filling his eyes, as the predator became the prey. Jin Wu had already realized that destiny had shifted. Ji-sun's fans erupted in euphoria, while the stunned silence of the opposition was deafening. Taeyoung was completely lost. He had been the emperor of the ring seconds ago, but now he was being trampled as if he were trash. Ji-sun stood over him with a gaze that promised murder, a terrifying aura radiating from his being. From the floor, the broken opponent begged for mercy. However, the protagonist was deaf to his pleas, stomping on his face once more, delivering a symphony of relentless kicks. The spectators began to whisper in fear, terrified that he would actually beat his opponent to death right there in the ring. Ji-sun was possessed by a demon of blind rage. People turned to Jin Wu asking if the boy would commit murder, if he continued with such lethal intensity. But instead of fear, a twisted smile played on the manager's lips. He was delighted by the young man's awakening bloodlust. He rejoiced, imagining that Ji-sun would be a box office goldmine, and mentally calculated who the next sacrificial lamb should be to create an even more legendary spectacle. Finally, friends rushed into the ring, restraining the berserker and screaming that the victory was already his. Taeyoung's professor watched in fury as his star pupil was dismantled. However, for Jin Wu, the only truth was profit, and he saw a diamond in the rough within Ji-sun's brutality. He just needed to turn this wild beast into a loyal hound. He decided he would be the only master to hold the young man's leash. Ji-sun finally returned to his senses, blinking as he saw his opponent nearly comatose on the canvas. Jin Wu approached, congratulating him on the dominance, confirming his eye for talent was absolute. He whispered to the boy to keep that same insane glint in his eyes for the next battle. The prize money would be handled by the agent. Afterward, Jin Wu walked away, and the two boys trailed behind him like satellites. Trying to bridge the gap, they invited Ji-sun to celebrate his triumph. Ji-sun, however, ruthlessly slapped Go-min's hand away, a silent warning to keep his distance. He walked off into the shadows, leaving the boys bewildered. A little further down the street, passing a store window, a hauntingly familiar melody stopped him cold. Looking up, he saw Isa Khan's face on a giant screen. The interviewer asked if the idol was aware of the massive scale of her current stardom. She smiled perfectly, replying that she felt her fans' devotion even during her lowest moments, thanking them with practiced grace. Sungmin and Go-min, who were still shadowing, the boy wondered why he stood frozen before the report on Isaac. It suddenly clicked in their minds that Ji-seon had been acting like a man possessed ever since her song played. They deduced he must be an anti-fan, though they couldn't fathom how anyone could hate the nation's beloved singer. Sungmin was shocked to realize that Go-min was actually a secret admirer of the idol. He mocked him, saying he expected such basic taste. However, he sheepishly revealed that he too was a member of her fan club. Sometime later, Ji-seon arrived at the coastline. The two boys continued their stealthy pursuit. The protagonist sat on a lonely bench staring into the infinite horizon of the sea. Sungmin asked if they should approach him, but Go-min sensed the heavy atmosphere and said it was dangerous. Sungmin insisted, arguing that the duty of a friend was to intervene. Go-min said he knew exactly who could soothe this beast, and he fell silent, weighing the consequences of his next move. Meanwhile, Han A-reum was deep in slumber when her phone buzzed. She woke to see a message from Ji-seon summoning her to the beach near the lighthouse. The girl quickly dressed, attempting a stealthy exit. She crept past her father, who was passed out at the table drowning in alcohol. Suddenly, he began shouting curses at the air, and terror seized her heart. But it was only a nightmare fueled by drink, and he slumped back into sleep. She managed to escape the suffocating house to meet her crush. On the beach, Go-min asked who Sungmin had called for backup, and the latter smirked, replying it was a girl. Go-min was stunned to learn Sungmin's secret was finally exposed. He was the one messaging the girls. He hurriedly explained that Han A-reum had no idea. It was him behind the screen. She had given that phone to Ji-sun as a sacred lifeline, desperate to connect with his heart through that device. However, when Sungmin took the phone, he replied, pretending to be Ji-sun. Guilt gnawed at him. Deep down, he knew he had to return it, but his own feelings held him hostage. Go-man placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, asking if he loved her. Sungmin's expression darkened. He admitted he used to have feelings, but now he clearly understood his place in this hierarchy. Go-man shoved him, telling him to return the phone immediately. Sungmin walked toward Ji-sun, who sat on the bench like a statue, and handed over the device. He bowed his head in apology, confessing his deception. He added that he had sent one final text begging Ji-sun not to reject Han A-reum's sincerity. As he retreated into the shadows, he whispered that they were a match made in heaven. Upon checking the screen, Ji-sun saw a notification she was almost there. For the first time, a storm of nervousness crashed over his usually calm demeanor. At that precise moment, Han A-reum appeared, running breathless to meet her beloved. The second she arrived, Go-man, watching from the shadows, was struck by her radiating beauty. While Go-man praised their chemistry, Sungmin felt his heart shatter, lamenting the loss of his dream girl. Go-man signaled that the show was over. He invited the heartbroken Sungmin to crash at his place for video games. The two friends vanished, leaving the lovebirds alone. A heavy silence dominated the area, broken only by the rhythmic crashing of the waves. Han A-reum typed a message, shocked that he had received it, and she waited with bated breath. Ji-sun typed back that his thoughts were consumed by her. She tried to break the ice, talking about the sound of the sea, but his response was minimal, just a single emoji. She asked if this was his usual haunt, and he admitted it was his first time stepping foot there. Ji-sun asked when she usually drifted to sleep. Han A-reum replied 10 o'clock, admitting that she was actually asleep when his notification woke her. He stood up, his presence towering, and offered to escort her home. But the girl gripped his arm with desperate strength. She refused to go back. He didn't argue or question her judgment. He simply acceded to her silent plea. He walked to the vending machine to buy drinks to cool the tension. She thanked him for his kindness, and he seized the moment to ask why she hesitated to leave. Her eyes darkened as she revealed the truth. Her home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. She added that his message today had been a ray of light, recalling that previously he had only sent a curt good night. That previous message had caught her off guard with its suddenness. She was confirming the text from the day before. However, it was Sungmin who had sent that lifeline, a truth Ji-sun chose to bury in silence. The girl continued, her voice trembling, explaining she was drowning in darkness that day, but that simple message felt like a divine intervention, giving her the will to endure. She felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude. Then she decided to probe deeper, asking why he remained so quiet. Ji-sun sank into his thoughts, immersed in a traumatic flashback, memories of an ex-girlfriend who seemed to have abandoned him. Security guards blocking his path, threatening him with arrest as the girl ran back, embracing him with all her might. She confessed she had rehearsed their breakup 1,000 times to freeze her heart. But seeing him now, the ice shattered. She swore she wouldn't abandon him even if it cost her very life, and begged Ji-sun for direction. He had assured her that no matter what calamity struck, he would stand as her shield, wiping her tears, and promising that everything would be all right. Atop the skyscraper, Go Bong-an, the CEO of Bong-an Entertainment, watched them like a hawk stalking prey. Returning to reality, Ji-sun replied to Han A-reum, stating that words have the power to pierce the soul and paralyze time itself. She looked at him, finding his perspective profoundly philosophical. She noted that while she didn't know his burden, she assumed his demons were far more complex than hers. He turned the question back, asking why she held her tongue. With a sad smile, she replied simply. Her words felt tainted just like her father's. She realized her father's toxic way of speaking was etched into her DNA, acknowledging it was a foolish fear. Ji-sun invited her to walk along the shoreline. As expected, on a Saturday night, the district was alive with energy. As they passed a bar, the atmosphere exploded into chaos. A pack of thugs began provoking a young man, criticizing him for drinking on their turf. With an arrogant smirk, the boy replied he could drink because his aura made him look older. The young man's confidence enraged the group. It was Kang Do-il, the gang leader who wanted to recruit Ji-sun, and he was there just wanting to drink in peace. One of the provocateurs sneered, asking where Do-il's lackeys were and why he was vulnerable. The boy retorted that he preferred to let the kids rest during the holidays. It was cleaner to handle the trash himself. The thug barked at him to leave, warning of severe consequences. Tauntingly, Do-il asked if these seniors, the bullies from Desi High, had pushed him past the breaking point, fueling a hatred that burned like wildfire. They mocked him, calling him petty and stubborn. One of them swept the table clean in a violent outburst, his eyes burning with the intent to crush him. But Kang Do-il stood tall, simply kicking the table back at the four aggressors. He declared, with a wolfish grin, that fear was a concept he had never learned. Everyone in the bar felt the atmosphere shift. The air grew heavy with the promise of violence. The one-on-one duel began instantly. Kang Do-il moved as if he were a max-level player toying with low-level mobs, effortless and cruel. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, his gaze locked onto Ji-sun's distinct blue hair. A smile cut across his face as he shouted, "What a twist of fate. I am absolutely thrilled to see my dear friend here." The gangster remarked that he was planning to pay a visit, but the heavens had arranged this meeting perfectly. He wrapped an arm around Ji-sun, who stood frozen in confusion, claiming this reunion was written in the stars. However, the thugs brawling in the bar lost their patience and charged out, demanding to know if Ji-sun was allied with this maniac. Do-il scoffed, asking if they were blind to the bond that radiated between them, affirming that he and Ji-sun were brothers in arms. The thugs, however, couldn't care less about their uncrest bromance. Sensing the killing intent, Ji-sun immediately shoved A-reum behind him, becoming her human shield. The mob attacked with savage fury, screaming that they would massacre these punks. While the gang leader engaged one attacker, another thug rushed toward Ji-sun, sneering that friends should share the same pain. With terrifying speed, the protagonist silenced the bully in a single motion. The two began to fight, back to back, a symphony of violence, warning each other whenever a blind spot was exposed, dismantling the entire group in mere seconds. Watching the brawl, A-reum realized that Ji-sun seemed to stand at the peak of an insurmountable wall far above ordinary people. Yet she saw that sometimes he would descend from that lonely height to save others. He appeared cold as ice, but a fire burned within him. While others fought for greed and selfish desires, Ji-sun was different. He fought with the desperation of a beast cornered, driven by a will that defied logic. Suddenly, one of the thugs drew a hidden blade, creeping up behind the boy like a shadow. Unaware of the lethal danger, Ji-sun allowed the enemy to get within striking distance. The girl screamed, her voice tearing through the noise, while Do-il roared a warning to duck. Ji-sun's reflexes kicked in instantly, dodging the blade by a hair's breadth. In a flash, the gang leader delivered a flying kick to the attackers, face cursing him for the cowardice of pulling a weapon in a fistfight. He spat that only the weak and unskilled resorted to such dirty tricks when cornered. United, they crushed every remaining opponent who dared to stand. Doyle turned to Jason asking if they didn't make a magnificent duo, having cleared the stage perfectly. Jason, however, ignored the praise, and 225 looked at A-reum, seeing the terror pooling in her tear-filled eyes. Doyle asked if he was scared, dismissing it as nothing. In response, the protagonist drove his fist squarely into Doyle's face. Confused and bleeding, Doyle asked what the hell was wrong. Without a word, Jason buried another punch into his stomach, dropping him to his knees. Gasping for air, the guy confessed that he had orchestrated everything just to witness Jason's true combat potential. When the protagonist threatened to end his life right there, the boy raised his hands in surrender, pleading that he didn't want to fight a teammate. He apologized for the rough method, explaining it was merely an entrance exam, and Jason had passed with legendary status. He then formally invited Jason to become his friend and join his crew. The boy, however, simply turned his back, guiding A-reum away from the chaos. Doyle trailed behind, them teasing that the two looked far too intimate to be wandering the streets at this ungodly hour. He claimed he was satisfied, feeling he played the role of Cupid in this event. He insisted that since he owed Jason a debt for the help he would show them a sanctuary to rest rather than walking aimlessly. The two hesitated, but exhaustion won over, and they accepted. The guy led them to a comic book library. He shouted for the attendant, who was comatose with sleep, completely unaware of reality, to wake up and serve the VIPs. He noted he had never brought anyone here before, and Doyle introduced them as his new crewmates. The attendant groggily noted that the quality of his friends had improved, as these two were actually good-looking. He told them to take the best spots and offered extra time on the house. While Doyle registered their accounts, the scene shifted to the darkness of A-reum's home. The girl's father awoke from a heavy slumber. Rising, he noticed the front door standing ajar. He rushed to his daughter's room only to find an empty bed. Panic set in. As he tore through the house, his desperation growing. With every second, he failed to find her. Back at the cafe, Doyle revealed this was his secret fortress, a place where he could escape the world. He granted them special access, a privilege he never offered to others. He asked if this VIP treatment settled his debt with the boy. He urged them to relax and lose themselves in a manhwa. Saying goodnight, he announced he would recharge his batteries, curled up in a corner, and instantly passed out. In the quiet, Jason checked his phone and asked A-reum if she was still shaken. A-reum whispered no, that the storm had passed. She asked if he wanted to read with her. He nodded, and together, they found peace. They selected a story and settled in. After a few pages and shy glances from the girl, the atmosphere shifted and they continued, reading in a comfortable silence. The world outside faded away until the library attendant appeared, offering complimentary drinks. It couldn't hide his shock that Doyle had friends of such caliber, noting that the boy usually only associated with thugs involved in endless street wars. As he handed over the beverages, the duo's eyes fell upon his hand. He was missing 2 fingers, a grim souvenir of a violent past. Seeing their gaze, he smiled bitterly, admitting he was numb to the loss, though the initial pain had been hell on earth. He confessed that Doyle, however, still carried the trauma of the older man's injury. Doyle, once an innocent soul, had veered off the path of righteousness after that bloody incident. He apologized for his heavy rambling on their first visit, but bowed his head, asking them to watch over Doyle, his precious junior. Time melted away, and the girl drifted into slumber, her head finding a resting place on his shoulder. She slept peacefully until her phone began screaming. Jolted by the noise, she awoke, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks as she realized she had been using Jizun as a pillow. Checking the screen, she froze 3 missed calls. Panic set in as she typed a message to Jizun explaining her father was calling and she had to vanish immediately. Jizun, ever the gentleman, insisted on escorting her. They walked beneath the canvas of a beautiful starry night. They arrived at her fortress, taking the elevator up to the threshold of her apartment. She thanked him softly for the brief moments of freedom she had tasted by his side. Jizun was puzzled by her melancholic tone as she approached the unit. But the moment she punched in the passcode, the door flew open. Her father stood there, a demon of rage. His voice boomed, demanding to know the time and how. Many times he had tried to summon her, accusing her of losing her mind. Seeing the defiance in her eyes, his anger boiled over into madness. Asterisk. Smack times. He struck her face with devastating force, cursing her for daring to look at him even though she was the sinner. With the girl crumpled on the floor, he roared, questioning if she had zero respect for her own blood. Grabbing her to drag her into the abyss of the house, he demanded to know how she dared step out without permission and what she was doing until this ungodly hour. His voice rose with every accusation, a tyrant demanding submission. Witnessing this atrocity, Jizun's blood ran cold, then hot with fury. He stepped forward. Locking eyes with Jizun, the father realized this stranger was the culprit, who took his daughter away and vowed that the boy would not leave this hallway alive today. But the girl, desperate, grabbed her father's clothes with trembling hands. The tyrant bellowed, ordering her to release him this instant. With tears streaming from her eyes, she looked at Jizun with a pleading gaze. "Run away," she screamed, taking another brutal blow to her face. The father swore he would end the boy's life right there. The girl withstood the assault, clinging to her father like a shackle, begging Jizun to escape. She shrieked for him to simply disappear. Jizun, overwhelmed, heeded her cry and turned his back. The protagonist realized he had already mastered the art of running away when he moved to this city. He had failed to confront his demons once again. As Jizun fled like a coward, the girl's father continued his rampage, demanding she let go. Jizun, however, just seized the opening and vanished. It was his nature to flee from battles he couldn't win. He shut his eyes tight, as if denying reality, struggling to dissolve into the silence and the shadows. Miles away from the girl's hell, he walked, his stamina drained and his spirit shattered. Finally, he reached his sanctuary. An old master was kneeling before the Buddha, chanting a sutra. Jizun collapsed at the doorstep. The old man, sensing his presence, spoke without turning. "You are late," he intoned. He noted it was the first time Jizun had broken his routine, sensing a storm in the boy's heart. This neighborhood where Jizun had sought refuge was supposed to be a haven of peace. Yet even here the gears of fate turned. He had formed bonds, and now a choice loomed before the situation spiraled out of control. Would he awaken and fight or run away like a dog? Once more days drifted by since the incident. The violence at school escalated. The fight club was a chaotic arena of music, pure savagery. The victors only ceased their assault when their prey begged for mercy, and the predators boasted about crushing the weak. Watching a student surrender before the first blow, Jin Wu stormed in to interrogate him. "The match barely started, and you bow your head," he growled. The trembling boy replied that the power gap was too wide. There was no point in fighting a losing battle. *Bam times Kim Jin Wu kicked him squarely in the face. "If you step into the ring, leave that loser mentality outside," he declared. "Music. Scum like you disgrace the title of fighter. Vanish from my sight." One of the lackeys whispered that Professor Kim was summoning him to the warehouse. Inside the shadowy storage room, the professor declared they needed true warriors, not glass cannons, and that the crowd was starving for Jizun's next match. Kim Jin Wu reported he was scouting for talent, but most lacked an iron will, and the rest were terrified of pain. The professor. Terror gripped the subordinate as the professor asked if he was admitting defeat. With a trembling voice, he stammered that failure wasn't an option, but finding a worthy prey would take time. He begged for a month, but the professor's gaze turned cold. The older man reminded him that he had plucked him from the gutter, turning a wretch in fake sneakers into a man who wore luxury, suits like armor. Confidence was his new mask. But the professor warned that their high-paying clients had zero patience. There were plenty of other arenas to feed their dopamine addiction. If the boy couldn't handle the heat, he could step away from the hound dog operation forever. Panic set in. The boy dropped to his knees, swearing loyalty and promising to transcend his limits. The professor crushed the boy's head beneath his shoe, a symbol of absolute dominance. "You have 1 week to find a challenger," he hissed. "Otherwise you will take responsibility and enter the ring yourself." Kim Jin Wu versus Ji-sun. A clash of titans. This way he could unleash his dormant killing intent once more, and the VIPs would lose their minds. The professor walked away, leaving the weight of the 1-week deadline hanging in the air. Kim Jin Wu seethed with rage at the thought of fighting Ji-sun. He needed a sacrificial lamb and fast. Meanwhile, under the bright sky of the rooftop, the trio enjoyed a peaceful lunch. Goen boasted about his premium pork cutlet box, scolding them that living on bread alone was pathetic. The two friends insisted Ji-sun eat more, claiming he was fading away. This sanctuary had become their daily ritual, a comfort zone away from the chaos. Suddenly, Ji-sun's phone buzzed. Min's eyes lit up, asking if it was the girl Han A-reum. With nervous energy, he probed about their relationship status and urged Ji-sun to check the screen. The protagonist rose silently, creating distance to read the message, while his nosy friend tried to peek at the screen. Goan smacked him on the back of the head, telling him to respect a man's privacy. The text was from Han A-reum asking to meet at the comic book store later that day. Time flew by, and soon they were alone amidst the shelves. Silence stretched between them. heavy yet comforting. She took a deep breath, gathering her resolve. It would be strange to stay silent now after I screamed that one time, she admitted. I loathe the sound of my own voice. It carries the vulgar curse of my father, a habit I picked up in my youth. I wish to seal my voice away forever, but I have no regrets because I refuse to let you get hurt. Han A-reum revealed her tragic past. Her mother had endured her father's tyranny until her spirit broke, and she fled. Left alone with that monster, Han A-reum spoke less and less to survive until her voice vanished, completely into the abyss. Naturally, her friends drifted away like leaves in the wind. Just then, Doyle entered the store. The clerk pointed out his friends were in the back. Han A-reum continued, confessing to Ji-sun that she was drowning in loneliness until the rumors reached her. A transfer student who never spoke, a kindred spirit. That was why she needed to know if his silence was born from the same darkness. Doyle rounded the corner, stunned to hear her speaking. He asked, "What miracle brought your voice back?" Blushing with embarrassment, she explained that a desperate situation left her with no other option. Doyle's curiosity piqued, asking what happened. Then, flashing a charming smile, he said, "Regardless of the reason, hearing you communicate freely is a blessing." He warmly congratulated her on breaking her seal of silence. The air grew heavy again until Doyle asked about Ji-sun, but he quickly waved it off, sensing the mood. "Since destiny has brought us all here, let's share a meal." He invited the clerk too, noting the shop was empty of customers. "Just close up shop and let's go." As they headed out for food elsewhere in the city, Jin Wu was consumed by fury, obsessed with destroying Ji-sun. His massive underling spoke up. "Giving us only 1 week is a death sentence. It is too cruel." Eyes burning with madness, Kim demanded, "Do you know a monster capable of this fight?" "I know no one, and it would be humiliating to lose to that transfer student," the bulky friend admitted. However, a name crossed his mind. "There is a predator who dropped out to join the real Underworld. Anyone who crosses his path faces a fate worse than death," he warned. "Isn't that overkill, bringing a true gangster into a high school dispute?" The other boy questioned nervously. "Who is this demon?" Jin Wu demanded. Meanwhile, in the city's underbelly, a man was being cornered by a loan shark over a 2-month overdue debt. Ghosting them without notice was seen as an insult to the organization. The debtor, weeping openly, swore he was trying to pay. The loan shark raised a pair of rusty scissors, questioning the truth of his words. "You want to settle the debt? We dragged you out of a casino. Is that your plan?" Desperate, the man cried out, "I went to the casino for a miracle, won jackpot, and I could have cleared the entire debt. My ancestors appeared in a dream. I can feel that destiny is about to change my life," he screamed. The loan shark grabbed the debtor's hand, the scissors clamping down hard on his finger. Terror flooded the man's eyes as he begged for mercy. The loan shark sneered, noting that even with a job, the rat hadn't paid a single cent, thinking he could wipe away his debt with a gamble. He looked around the room with dead eyes. "Do I look like an idiot to you?" he spat. The enforcer grabbed the man's hand like a steel trap. "This will sting a little," he sneered, blade glinting. "Don't worry, I am an artist. I promise a clean cut." The debtor screamed for mercy, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. */ blood sprayed as the finger was severed from the hand. Silence fell over the room. The enforcer wiped his blade. "Listen closely," he warned. "What happens now determines your fate. You have exactly 1 hour to bring the cash. Succeed and we return the finger for reattachment." It was a sadistic game. "Now run." Tears streaming down his face, the man fled for his life. The boss turned to his subordinate. "Happy with another trophy for your collection?" The henchman scoffed, looking at the digit with disdain. "Trash quality," he muttered. "But I admit, the thrill of the cut felt good. It has been too long." This was the monster they needed. The target the burly student had chosen for the ultimate clash. Jung-ai Sunbae, the legendary psycho who once severed a classmate's finger, simply because he played the guitar. A true demon in human skin. "That guy is beyond crazy," his friend whispered, a chill running down his spine. After that incident, he didn't reform. He went to juvie and came out a full-fledged gangster. Jin Woo's eyes lit up with chaotic glee. "Is there a way to summon this beast?" Even the burly mastermind was stunned. "You actually want to call him?" The danger was palpable, but so was the excitement. Imagine the spectacle. The psychopathic Sunbae versus the invincible transfer student. A battle of monsters. Gangster killer. "Who cares?" the boy declared. "We aren't in a position to be picky. They just needed to ignite the war." While the storm brewed, the 4 friends enjoyed a peaceful evening. Hung dragged his feet, shadows under his eyes. "I hate crowds," he grumbled. Doyle sighed, nudging him. You can't rot in the manhwa shop forever, man. He looked at his friend with concern. You used to own the stage, Doyle reminded him. Hung looked away. That was a lifetime ago. A-reum chimed in softly, just a phase right. Doyle wouldn't let it go. But you're a guitar genius, don't you miss the band? Sensing the tension, he pivoted. Anyway, street food or Chinese tonight? But fate had other plans. A black sedan slowed to a crawl beside them. Inside, the predator spotted his prey. Hold on, the loan shark smirked. I see some old friends I need to greet. He stepped out of the car, aura radiating malice. Be right back, he told his crew. Then his voice cut through the air. Hung. He sauntered over, hands in his pockets. I wasn't sure at first, but seeing you tremble. Yeah, it is definitely you. The ghosts of the past crashed into the present. Panic seized the boy. He stumbled back, crashing into Doyle, desperate to escape. What's wrong? The gangster laughed, a hollow sound. You look like you've seen a ghost. Is my face that scary? He loomed over the group. You kids look close. How touching. His eyes narrowed. Why are you paralyzed? Aren't you happy to see your dear Sunbae? The pressure was suffocating. It has been so long, he taunted. Won't you even say hello? Where are your manners? One of the friends stepped up, voice shaking but firm. We were just getting food. Excuse us, we are leaving. He added dryly. Keep talking, and we will lose our appetites. The gangster paused. The air grew heavy with unspoken violence. Then, a smile that didn't reach his eyes appeared. Feisty. He pulled out a thick wallet. My treat. Consider it a reunion gift. He stuffed the cash into the boy's pocket forcefully. Eat some meat. Poor students need their protein, right? He turned his gaze to Byung-woo, the traumatized victim. Our destinies seem to be tangled, don't they? His hand went to his pocket again. I ran all the way here just to give you this, Guy announced. I acquired it today. And I thought, you of all people would appreciate it. The other boys watched in confusion as the horror unfolded. What sick game was he playing? Guy held out the object. Byung-woo tried to pull away, but the fear rooted him to the spot. Guy forced the gift into his hand. A severed finger. Take this to the hospital, he whispered, like a devil on his shoulder. Tell them to sew it back on. Then you can play your precious guitar again. His voice rose to a manic shout. Tell me, that is your dream. Say it. The cruelty was absolute. The blue-haired student Jian turned his head away. He couldn't watch. But the scene triggered something deep within him. A memory surfaced from the darkness. Someone calling his name. Jibon. A voice from the past. Still not used to this place, are you? The voice asked gently. Listen to me. Be grateful for those who approach you first. Making friends isn't easy for someone like you. The advice echoed in his mind. They have crossed the great wall of your silence. They will become your strength, your precious people on this journey. The words struck a chord in his heart. Back in the present, the hesitation vanished. Jian reached out. He grabbed Guy's wrist with a grip like iron. Guy spun around, shocked. Jian stared back, unflinching, eyes burning with silent fury. The predator had just become the prey. Who is this punk? Guy hissed, eyes narrowing. Can't you read the atmosphere? Jian tightened his grip, refusing to let go. Guy scoffed, grabbing Jian's wrist in return. The audacity, you arrogant brat. He looked at Jian's hand and smirked. At least you have pretty fingers. With eyes as cold as ice, he delivers a chilling ultimatum metal again, and you lose your fingers. He tosses the boy's hand aside like trash. Did I make myself clear? He asks. The terrified student stumbles back, retreating in fear. But Geit isn't done. He spits out an insult, calling him a worthless son of a bitch. Are you looking for a death wish? He sneers, branding him an arrogant bastard. A car horn cuts through the tension, drawing his gaze to the street. He looks down at Byung-woo, who is crumpled on the asphalt, and asks a cruel philosophical question. Tell me, what does a life without dreams taste like? A mocking laugh escapes his lips. He wishes them a hearty meal, before strolling away with terrifying casualness. Behind him, Byung-woo's legs finally give out. Byung-woo Hyung. His friend rushes to his side, screaming in panic. Even in the dirt, Byung-woo worries about them first. The group surrounds him, anxiety painted on their faces. He forces a smile, claiming the past is dead and that he is fine now. Let's just go, Byung-woo urges, playing the strong older brother. The student with the piercing looks at him with sorrow, calling out to his Hyung. High on the rooftop, Kang Doyle is crushed by the weight of his own cowardice. He screams in frustration. He had been useless. In the end, nothing had changed. Who was that monster? The girl asks, sensing the darkness. That is Jung Gi-tae, he answers, his voice trembling. The devil who severed Byung-woo Hyung's finger while he played his beloved guitar. He explains that Gi-tae did it for one reason, to shatter a dream. It all happened because Byung-woo tried to stop the gangster's reign of terror. The memory drags us back to the music room. Gite had a blade at a girl's throat, threatening to silence her forever. Desperate, Byung-gu tackled him from behind. He screamed for the madness to end, but Gite was a wild beast. Ignoring the pleas for mercy, the delinquent struggled to break free. The air was thick with tension. Suddenly, Gite slashed out with the knife. Byung-gu threw his hands up in a desperate defense to protect his face. Gite spun around, eyes blazing with fury. "Why on earth did you interfere?" he roared, enraged by the interruption. He cursed him for being meddlesome. "Do you think strumming a guitar makes you better than me?" he spat. Byung-gu stood his ground. "You don't belong here," he cried. "This is a sanctuary where dreams flourish. You are a destroyer," Byung-gu declared. "A predator who tramples others for selfish desires deserves no dream." Irritated by this truth, Gite scoffed. "What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" Raising the blade high, he vehemently dismissed the very concept of hope. He turned his fury on the students gathered at the door. "What are you looking at?" he bellowed. The aura around him was suffocating as he ordered them to vanish. "I'll carve you all into pieces," he threatened, forcing his way through the crowd like a curse. He stormed down the hallway, leaving fear in his wake. Chaos erupted as students rushed to help the wounded Hyung. "Get a teacher," someone screamed. Back in the present, Jibon reveals that Byung-gu never returned to school after that day. They thought the nightmare was over. But 2 weeks later, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence of the band room. In the flashback, Byung-gu freezes in the hallway, the sound chilling his blood. He pushes the door open to find a scene from hell. Gite stood there, rusty pliers in his hand, taunting him to act superior now. Entering the room, Byung-gu is forced to witness the brutal reality of having a dream. Gite monologued about a hopeless existence. Watching from the shadows, Jibon confesses he was paralyzed by fear once again. Sitting atop his victim, the monster finally noticed his audience. "Oh," he smirked. "When did you get here?" Jite stood up, stretching as if refreshed. Then came the dark warning. "Speak of this, and you meet the same fate." He dragged a bloodied hand down the boy's face, a mock caress before walking away. Jibon was left behind standing statue still, trapped in his own helplessness. Returning to the present, Jibon explains that the devil abandoned school after that incident. Rumor had it he went to a reformatory only to emerge as a full-fledged gangster. Now he operates in the shadows as a loan shark enforcer, a true creature of the underworld. "He made me who I am," Jibon admits. His voice drips with venom as he recalls his vow. A demon who crushes dreams must be destroyed. He falls to his knees, screaming at the sky. He trained to inflict that same pain on Gite, yet when the moment came, he froze. He whispers in defeat, "I thought I had become stronger, but I am still weak." The girl asks, "Is that why you are gathering forces?" Jibon nods grimly. "Against a gangster I cannot stand alone," he declares. "I will crush him with overwhelming force and make that bastard pay." Jibon's voice cut through the air, heavy with conviction. "That is exactly why. I needed Gione." A profound silence descended, freezing Gione in place. Shadows stretched long as he walked down the street beside her. She nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation, but her voice trembled with a warning. They were walking into a lion's den. "A gangster," she whispered. "Isn't revenge against a monster like that a suicide mission?" But the fire in his eyes didn't flicker. Doyle's tragic past had struck a chord deep within his soul. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Those who trample on the dreams of others, there must not be allowed to roam free. Jibon marched forward, gaze fixed on the horizon. "This isn't petty vengeance," he declared. "This is justice." Meanwhile, the mundane world continued its rotation. A friend nudged Yena, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Your birthday is coming up. You haven't forgotten the date, have you?" Another classmate chimed in, excitement building. "Are you throwing a bash? Where's the venue?" Then the million-one question dropped. "Will you invite Jibon?" Yena hesitated, her heart doing a nervous flip. Would it be awkward for him? But her friend waved it off. "Don't be silly. He wouldn't dare ignore his sunbae on her special day." "Speak of the devil," the friend gasped, pointing out the window. "Look who it is." Down in the courtyard, Jibon walked side by side with A-reum. The school rumor mill began to churn. "Isn't that Han A-reum? The silent girl from the class next door?" Two male students approached them, bowing with a cheerful "good morning." Watching from above, a dark cloud of jealousy formed over Yena's face. "Why is she the main character all of a sudden?" Yena scoffed, turning her back to the window. "Whatever. Why should I care about a nobody?" But the irritation lingered. Later, the school hierarchy reared its ugly head. Bullies cornered Jibon. "Hey, bread shuttle. This lunch doesn't satisfy us." Suddenly, a delicate figure appeared at the door. "A-reum, what is she doing here?" a bully sneered. Clutching a bag to her chest, she made her stand. She wanted to share a meal with them. Jibon's gaze bored into her. "Sure, she can join one," mocked. Then he froze. He stared at her eyes, widening in shock. "Wait, Did she just speak? The realization rippled through the room. The mockery vanished, replaced by awe, as they saw the packed lunch. Did you prepare this feast yourself? A-reum offered the food, and the wolves became puppies, accepting it readily. From the shadows of the hallway, Yena observed the trio, her expression unreadable. Elsewhere, in the dark underbelly of the city, Guy barked into his phone. Deadline confirmed, he stated coldly. Transfer the funds immediately. The woman on the other end mentioned her husband's return, but Guy had no time for pleasantries. He cut the call, ending the connection. Cold business. As he approached the hideout, something caught his eye, a business card stuck to the door. He peeled it off, stepping into the dimly lit office. Boss, I have returned. 3 young strangers turned to face him, their eyes assessing the newcomer. The strangers murmured, sensing his latent power. He noticed the card. Strong grip. One whispered to the other. Is recruiting a gangster really a wise move? Another smirked, arrogance dripping from his voice. Fear not, they are merely the cancer of society, nothing but trash to be used. Guy stopped dead. The air in the room turned frigid. What did you just say? He repeated the insult slowly, letting the rage boil. Cancer trash. Jin Wu spun around a predator, alerting to prey. The boss looked between his man and the intruders, visible confusion on his face. Who are these kids? They were discussing gangsters, sir, a subordinate stammered. The boss narrowed his eyes, his aura darkening. Gangsters, are you implying we fit that description? Panic flickered in the young man's eyes. No. We're just humble, tax-paying business owners. Defensiveness raised its shield instantly. The boss leaned forward, his presence suppressing the room. Then tell me, what exactly made us look like criminals to you? The boy froze, throat dry. He couldn't speak the truth. In his mind, however, the answer was screaming times. Everything about you screams mafia asterisk. The boss stepped closer. Cat got your tongue, or are you here to beg for a loan? The boy recoiled, shaking his head violently in denial. Guy held up the card like a death sentence. Does this item belong to you? The young man nodded, his voice trembling. We were here to deliver that, he squeaked. Guy studied the text. Hound dog. What exactly is this organization after? The boss cut in, his voice deep as gravel. I know that name. The tension in the room spiked instantly. A lackey chimed in. It's Duck's operation, sir. The boss nodded grimly. Gambling dens. Underground business. A place where blood creates profit, the boss mused. People betting on fights. The young man confirmed it. We recruit talent. Fighters who can earn significant sums. Kim's mind raced. Asterisk. Hound dog. Asterisk. Were the backers truly gangsters? The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a deafening click. He had walked right into a demon's nest. Meanwhile, Doyle intercepted Jibon. Hey, do you know how to handle a motorcycle? Why do you ask? Jibon's guard went up. Doyle smirked, eyes gleaming. I own a beast of a machine, but I need a driver. A-reum tilted her head, confused. Why does Jibon need to drive? Doyle pointed to his leg with a feigned grimace. Twisted my ankle in gym. Can't ride. He tossed a helmet through the air. Jibon caught it effortlessly. Where are we headed? A-reum demanded. Just a short ride, Doyle lied smoothly. He winked at her. Relax. I'll bring your boyfriend back in one piece. No, A-reum flushed, denying it instantly. We're just friends. Ignoring the banter, Jibon gripped the helmet. Let's go, Doyle. Doyle signaled to his crew. Just getting some fresh air. Then the 2 young lions walked toward the steel beast waiting outside. Doyle eyed him skeptically. Can you really tame this thing? In response, Jibon revved the engine and the front wheel kissed the sky. Like this. As they tore through the neon-lit city, Doyle shouted over the wind. That guy has already stirred up a storm. Suddenly, danger. Slow down. Sharp turn ahead, Doyle screamed. But Jibon didn't flinch. With surgical precision, he leaned into the curve. He asked if he had mastered the art of countersteering. Confusion clouded his eyes. Who on earth is Gibbon? He questioned, utterly perplexed. Upon reaching their target, Doyle signaled for the stop. Drop me here, he commanded. Jion's eyes locked onto the establishment sign, analyzing the enemy turf. Crouching low like a predator, Doyle gripped a jagged piece of brick from the asphalt. The weight of it felt right in his hand. He raised the stone to his ear, mocking a phone call. His voice trembled with raw sincerity. If you weren't the one driving Jion, I would have hesitated. I would have turned my back and fled like a coward just like last time. He steeled his resolve. This is my way of shattering those chains. I will no longer hold back. Jion understood the gravity immediately. This was not just vandalism. It was a declaration of war. Doyle's voice hardened. That bastard broke Byongu's spirit. He forced a proud leader to humiliate himself, to urinate in the middle of the street like a dog. He looked at Jion, eyes burning. Is that something a man should forgive? I have to do at least this much to survive. His gaze bore into Jian, tense and desperate, waiting for a verdict. Meanwhile, deep in the gang's hideout, the boss sneered. This playground isn't for children like you. But Kim stepped forward. I came because the rumors led me here. He recognized the legend before him. My senior, Zhang Gai, the infamous dropout who chose the path of the gangster. The student bowed. We are preparing for the ultimate showdown, and we believe you are the monster we need. Guy's eyes narrowed with cold amusement. You want to recruit me? For a schoolyard brawl between kids? Do not misunderstand, the recruiter urged. This opponent is a beast. Underestimating him would be a fatal mistake. That sparked a flame in Guy's dark eyes. The thought of prey that could actually bite back. It was intoxicating. The student slid his phone across the table. It is this transfer student. He is a variable we cannot control. The moment the screen lit up, Guy froze. The name was Jian. But the violence on screen spoke louder. The video captured a devastating strike. Jian landing a hit that would shatter a normal man. The recording played on. Pure chaos from a previous battle unfolded. The clip ended freezing on a close-up of Jian's cold, determined eyes. Guy studied the face. Recognition dawned on him like a sunrise. He remembered that face. The boy who stood beside Doyle. The one with the artist's hands. Back in the smoke-filled room, the boss growled, "Don't interfere with student drama." Guy nodded respectfully to his senior, but his blood was already boiling. Crash. A brick shattered the window, screaming through the air. A shard of glass sliced Guy's cheek, drawing first blood. Murderous rage erupted instantly. Which suicidal maniac did that? The boss roared, rushing to the shattered opening. Do you want to die? Through the jagged frame, they spotted their target. A lone motorcycle tearing up the asphalt. Guy's predator eyes locked onto the fleeing prey. The engine's roar faded into the distance. The boss asked if he was injured, but Guy was already gone mentally. The wind whipped past Jian's helmet. Was it a foolish taunt? Perhaps, but he could feel the immense weight of the courage that act required. On the back seat, Doyle was shaking. His hand gripped Jian's shoulder with a death grip. It wasn't just nerves, it was primal terror. The crushing pressure of an insurmountable mountain looming over them. Jian knew that suffocating sensation all too well. They vanished down the road. Meanwhile, Guy had made his choice regarding the Hound Dog crew. The students bowed in gratitude, swearing loyalty. We promise our full commitment. But the Predator had rules. I decide the battlefield and the hour. And bring me your strongest warrior. No fodder. The school gym one suggested foolishly. Guy's aura turned dark. Do I look like a student playing games to you? The student recoiled, terror seizing him. He quickly bowed, realizing the ferocity of the man named Gitai. The location would be changed. The air grew heavy. Guy asked slowly, Do you know a rat named Kang Doyle? Yes, the student stammered. He is a notorious delinquent from Dason Industrial High. Just a freshman. Guy smirked, touching his scarred cheek. Has that little punk really grown teeth? Rumor has it he's building an army, the student added. But why does a legend like you care about a freshman? Guy's eyes gleamed with malice. Find him. That boy has a very expensive debt to settle with me. High in the mountains, tranquility reigned. Jian swept the temple courtyard, the rhythm meditative. He paused, bowing to his master. The old master smiled warmly at the new arrivals. Peace be with you. Have you come to offer prayers? Sangman nodded respectfully. Yes, my mother insisted. She said it is the first day of the month. She reminded me that it has been too long since our last visit. So here I am, obeying her command. A filial son, the master praised. Suddenly, Sangman froze. Jian, what are you doing here? Do you live in this holy place? They settled on the wooden porch. I was certain you were a dorm student. Sangman laughed. I used to run around these grounds as a child. He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. Hey, you won't believe this. Jian is at Sabuam Temple. Get over here now. I'm already moving. The voice crackled. Make sure to have a feast ready. Footsteps thundered against the stone stairs, ascending rapidly. A voice called out, breaking the silence. Sungmin offered a warm greeting as Jibon turned his eyes narrowing to identify the arrival. But behind the man, Han A-reum stood waiting. Sungmin explained with a grin to Jibon, I sent a message to summon Han A-reum here as well. Han A-reum nodded, gently, her expression softening when Sungmin asked, Is everything all right? Meanwhile, in a gritty corner of the city, a gang of delinquents surrounded a broken scooter. One wiped grease from his hands, muttering, Looks like a spark plug failure. Another thug lounging on a worn-out armchair scratched his head and asked, Could it be a coil malfunction? One of them sighed, proposing, We need a professional, let's drag this to a mechanic. but his companion scoffed. Do you have any idea what that costs? The young man turned away in frustration. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. Guy, sliding cold brass knuckles onto his fist, sneered. Count your numbers. You'll understand why I equipped this weapon. I don't intend to waste a single second on trash. Provoked by the killing intent, one thug stepped up. Who do you think you are? I'm here to collect a debt, Guy stated, his voice devoid of mercy. The thug tried to maintain his ground, demanding, identify yourself before I break you, but talk was cheap. Without a flicker of hesitation, Guy's fist exploded into the man's face. The victim crumbled, groaning in agony. He's terrified, another gang member shouted, trying to rally courage. Guy didn't speak. He simply launched another devastating strike, crushing the young man's jaw. The thug collapsed instantly. Now only one target remained standing. The last survivor eyeing the bloodied. Brass knuckles trembled. The impact. It's catastrophic. Guy turned his predatory gaze toward the final victim. You, he whispered. You will make the perfect sandbag for my warm-up. The young man cursed at Guy, desperate adrenaline fueling a threat. To kill him. Guy merely smiled, a demon enjoying the show. These fools still don't understand the difference in our levels. Shut your mouth, the thug screamed, charging forward with blind fury. A pretty boy like you drops in one hit. He threw a haymaker but struck only air, as Guy weaved effortlessly. Seizing the opening, Guy's counterattack smashed into the opponent's face, followed instantly by a second bone-shattering blow. The man stumbled back, blood masking his features. Guy beckoned him with a sadistic grin. Come on, try again. Realizing the wall of power before him, the man accepted his fate but refused to flee. Guy widened his stance. Come at me. Determined to prove that size meant nothing against skill, the thug prepared for a final stand. Finally, Doyle snapped. He took the initiative, snatching up a heavy metal pipe. The scene shifted. The man in the green tracksuit was already kissing the pavement. Looking down at the broken body, Guy lectured. This is the result when you are slow and only brooded. Focus on guarding. Doyle raised the iron pipe high, screaming with murderous rage, die. The metal crashed down, but Guy caught the blow with crossed arms, his defense impenetrable. Staring into the trembling eyes of the attacker, Guy asked, Are you finished, Kang Doyle? Doyle remained silent, fear creeping in. Holding the vibrating pipe, Guy pressed him. I asked if you are ready, then screaming Doyle's name, he challenged the boy's very soul. With every ounce of willpower, Kang Doyle tried to hold his ground, but Guy spat. You are still the same trembling coward you always were. Doyle raised the pipe again, desperate to silence the truth. Shut up, Guy vowed, that Doyle lacked the guts to defeat him even in death. He twisted the knife of memory. You just watched. You froze while Byung-gu's finger was hacked off. The trauma hit Doyle harder than any fist. He cursed, the world broken. Unmoved, Guy barked the command to kneel. Kang Doyle's knees hit the dirt, as Guy loomed over him like a judgment god. That is your rightful place. Moments later, Guy ordered Doyle to look up, asking how. Dare a weakling raise a weapon against me? In a blur of motion, he slammed his fist into Doyle's skull, punishing the insubordination. Lift your head, he roared, striking the boy's face again and again, calling him a worm. Kang Doyle collapsed completely. Guy demanded he beg for his life. Broken and defeated, Kang Doyle bowed in total surrender. Meanwhile, in a serene temple, the atmosphere was thick with incense. Han A-reum served a humble meal to the group. One of the monks smiled gently. I have not seen your face here before. A-reum bowed respectfully. It is our first visit. The monk welcomed them warmly. Please return whenever you seek peace. While scrubbing dishes, Sunman whispered to Han A-reum seems to really vibe with this place. Nearby, another boy struggled with a massive vase, grumbling that he was the only one stuck with hard dollar labor. The head monk praised their diligence, but Sunman shook his head. No, I need to work to earn this meal. The monk smiled, saying he hoped to see them again. Please rest your bodies before you depart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, one of the boys stretched. Time flew by. This rest healed my soul. Two others turned to Jiban with hopeful eyes. Can we come back to the temple to help out? One confessed, my mind feels quiet here. Sunman laughed, teasing, you already look like a monk in training. He paused, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Maybe I should pursue this path. Suddenly a scream of fire shattered the tranquility. Chaos erupted. Jiban and his friend sprinted outside, scanning for the source of the alarm. In the courtyard, a monk was already battling the flames. Someone speculated the blaze had ignited from a careless cigarette butt. A man cursed the negligence of visitors, but the monk offered calm words amidst the smoke. At least, thank the heavens the flames were extinguished before total destruction. He tried to soothe the trembling crowd, but the fear in Sunung's eyes was real. I felt my lifespan shortened by 10 years tonight, one student gasped, clutching his chest. Sun Eung nodded grimly. This could have been a massacre. But in that instant, Ji-eun's sharp eyes caught a discrepancy. A sinister business card from the Hound Dog Syndicate was pinned to the door. Someone pointed it out, confirming it was a fresh warning. Suddenly, a psychic vision of Kang Do-il flickered in Ji-eun's mind, bloody and broken. The spectral image of Do-il screamed in desperation, begging Ji-eun to stay away, his voice cracking with terror. Don't come, run. Meanwhile, inside a luxury sedan, a man with glasses coldly asked his subordinate if the stage for violence was set. The underling confirmed the preparations were complete, hyping the main event, a brutal clash between a gangster and the transfer student. From the shadows of the backseat, the executive verified the gangster's identity as Jung Gai. Lighting a cigarette, the woman beside him noted that this brute hailed from the notorious Daeso Technical High School. As the car sped off, the executive inquired about the fighter's allegiance. The reply was swift. He was a loyal dog of the Jak-2 Association. The executive murmured the syndicate's name with interest. However, the subordinate interrupted, revealing that he too was under their thumb. He added that Jung Gai was entering this duel with murderous enthusiasm. Skeptical, the executive wondered if the Jak-2 Association was planting players just to inflate the gambling stakes. But he quickly conceded, realizing the profit potential was too massive to ignore. The subordinate was ordered to broadcast the match far and wide to maximize the hype, but in a moment of confusion, he asked which side the boss was actually betting on. Calling him a fool, the executive declared his unwavering support for the powerful Jak-2 Association. The scene shifted to the serene canopy of the forest. Below the leaves, Ji-eun tore through the woodland path. He moved with the fluidity of a predator, his breath steady. At the peak, he unleashed a high kick that sliced the air. This was not just exercise. It was preparation for war. I will fight with every ounce of my soul, he vowed to the wind. He swore to cultivate a strength so overwhelming that no enemy would ever dare threaten his people again. Just then, his loyal friends emerged, led by the monk's directions. One panted that the hike was worth it, while another jokingly begged for a chocolate bar to survive the exhaustion. Gasping for air, Han A-reum tried to compose herself. Sunman reminded Ji-eun of the gravity of today's battle. Another friend admitted he only came because worry was eating him alive. They promised to scream their support, until their lungs gave out no matter who stood across the ring. A-reum's eyes burned with determination to cheer him on. Their unity forged an armor around Ji-eun's heart. Arriving at the destination, a finger pointed toward the looming structure. The atmosphere was heavy with killing intent. Sunman was stunned. He never imagined the duel would be hosted in such a grim location. His body trembled with an instinctual fear. Another boy asked if Ji-eun was all right, noting that their friend walked into the abyss without a shred of hesitation. Sunman wondered if their voices could even reach him in such darkness. Before the warehouse, a group of enforcers stood like statues. The fight organizer stepped forward to welcome Ji-eun, claiming it was an honor to see the challenger arrive on time. His tone was polite, but his eyes were cold. One of the friends snapped, accusing the man of setting the fire to blackmail Ji-eun. Feigning ignorance, the organizer asked his partner, who shrugged it off. He advised Ji-eun to ignore the noise and focus on the violence, leaving the friends raging. Music. As the tension mounted, the organizer hyped the match, explaining that the gambling odds were skyrocketing. He warned Ji-eun not to underestimate his opponent and demanded a show of absolute power. A shout echoed, "Open the gates." The heavy metal doors groaned open. Ji-eun and his crew peered into the belly of the beast. Inside, a bloodthirsty crowd roared like a tempest. The sheer weight of their hostility pressed down on the students. From the shadows of the arena, a voice called out Ji-eun's name. Jung Gai stood with his back turned, his aura radiating menace. "I've been waiting," he growled. Turning slowly, the gangster smirked. "You know exactly who I am thanks to our friend Do-il." Music. The two warriors locked eyes. Ji-eun shifted into his combat stance. A-reum gasped in recognition, and Sunman asked if she knew this monster. The revelation that Jung Gai was a hardened gangster sent shockwaves through the group. "Time to finish what we started?" Jung Gai declared, his confidence overflowing. But before the first punch, he announced a special guest to motivate Ji-eun. The crowd parted, and Ji-eun and A-reum froze in horror. There, chained in the center like an animal, was Kang Do-il. He looked up with dead eyes, whispering that Ji-eun shouldn't have come. "Music, I didn't want you to see me like this," he rasped. He begged Ji-eun to leave, but it was too late. A-reum covered her mouth to stifle a scream of despair. The friends were paralyzed with confusion, asking why their friend was broken. Jung Gai's voice dripped with malice as he demanded to know if Jibon understood why Doyle was rotting in chains. But silence was his only answer, heavy and suffocating. Vowing to extract blood for every ounce of pain he had felt, Jung Gai sneered, asking if Jibon was truly prepared to die for that wretch. Then a cruel twist. He tapped his pocket, revealing the key to Doyle's chains, promising to surrender it only in defeat. But for this game, he demanded a price in blood, a twisted condition should he emerge victorious. Terror washed over Jibon's allies instantly, their instincts screaming danger. With a chilling calm, Guy declared that cash meant nothing in this underworld. No, his prize was far more personal. If he won, he would claim 2 of Jibon's fingers as a trophy. He dared him to accept this devil's bargain. His friends recoiled in absolute horror at the absurdity. They scrambled to stop the madness, shouting that this wasn't a duel but a slaughter. This opponent wasn't human. He was a monster, a complete psychopath. Han A-reum's voice trembled with a grim warning about the man's cruelty. Suddenly a memory flashed like a jagged blade the day Doyle's. Hands shook uncontrollably, clutching that motorcycle. The trauma ran deep. The flashback revealed even Byung-gu had been so petrified of Guy that he had soiled himself in sheer terror. Back in the cold reality of the arena, the gangster taunted, asking if Jibon felt that same fear. Jibon could feel the suffocating pressure this man exerted on everyone around him, but as he shed his jacket, discarding his hesitation, he declared that the time for restraint was over. His friends gasped, "Are you really doing this?" But across the ring, Jong Gitai grinned with predatory excitement, savoring the praised spirit. Jibon stepped into the center of the abyss, steeling his resolve for combat. The atmosphere exploded. The crowd roared like beasts while his friends watched with bated breath. The 2 warriors stood, face to face in the eye of the storm, surrounded by a sea of bloodlust. The announcer's voice cut through the noise with a megaphone, declaring the carnage was about to commence. "Place your bets now," he screamed. Introducing the first gladiator, Jong Gai, the unshakable powerhouse of the underworld. And, facing him, the transfer student who crushed the champion, who will remain standing. The announcer whipped the audience into a frenzy, the air electric with anticipation. The countdown began. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the control room, a bespectacled man watched every pixel with cold calculation. Gazing at the 2,000 souls screaming for violence, he mused on the grandeur of this coliseum. The stage was set perfectly. "Fight until the floor runs red," he whispered. The bell rang. Jong-gai launched himself forward like a cannonball, a devastating knee strike aimed straight for Jibon's skull. But the boy blocked the lethal blow and snapped back with a lightning-fast kick. He dashed back, creating distance. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch. Preparing for the next clash, Jong Gitai shifted his stance. A storm of punches rained down, but Jibon tracked every movement. His raw speed and power were monstrous, yet he possessed no formal training, no boxing, no martial arts. He was a pure street brawler. A difficult puzzle to solve due to his beastly physique. "Are you trembling?" Jong-gai roared in fury. Closing the gap instantly, Jibon drove a sledgehammer punch straight into his opponent's ribs. A clean hit. He felt the impact reverberate through bone. But Gatai retaliated instantly, smashing a fist into Jibon's face. "That didn't even tickle," he scoffed. A monster challenging a child. Analyzing the enemy's inhumane reaction speed, Jibon hunted for a weakness. But even without technique, the opponent's natural gifts were overwhelming. Brute force bridged the gap, and Jibon began to take heavy damage. Refusing to yield, the boy lashed out, slamming a kick into Gitai's jaw. Was that supposed to be a massage? Jong Gitai mocked, his eyes wide with lunacy. "Do you honestly think you can bring me down with that?" He laughed. "Let me show you true hell," Guy roared, unleashing a barrage. Pain didn't break him. It only fueled the fire of his rage. The crowd chanted Jong-gai's name like a dark hymn. "Who is winning?" one of Jibon's friends stammered. "His guard." "It's crumbling," the other noted grimly. The analysis was bleak. The opponent's physique was simply too dominant. One clean hit could be catastrophic for Jibon. "He's trying to wear him down," one explained. Jibon's strategy is accumulated damage, death by 1,000 cuts. But Guy, he sought to end it with a single earth-shattering blow of overwhelming force. "If Jibon takes that hit, it's over," A-reum whispered, terrified. But suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos. Kang Doyle screamed from his chains, calling her name. Ignoring the battle, A-reum sprinted toward the captive. "You have to stop this," Doyle pleaded, his eyes wild. "Why did you drag Jibon into this hell?" "He had no choice," she cried. "They threatened to burn his temple to ash." "Damn it all." Doyle cursed, straining against his bonds. "Get me out of here, I need that key," he shouted. "Jong-gai has it," she sobbed, trying to make him see reason. "I don't care, I'll find a way," Doyle insisted. "You don't understand," he warned darkly. "That man is a venomous snake. He is capable of anything." A-reum trembled, struggling to breathe. Meanwhile, the symphony of violence continued. The duel raged on with ferocious intensity, forcing Han A-reum to lock her gaze back on the arena. She tracked every shift in momentum with breathless anticipation. Jibon landed a devastating blow. "Don't let up," a friend screamed from the sidelines, fueling the chaos. Jibon kept, raining fire upon Jongtae. "Now is the moment, finish him." The crowd's roar became a deafening wave of encouragement. "Show him your true strength, hit. For him with everything you've got," his allies commanded, driving the boy forward as he pressed the attack. "You fool, I was waiting for." "Exactly." This opening, the gangster sneered, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Your pitiful self-defense tricks mean nothing on the cruel streets." With a feral roar, he launched a counterstrike. Jibon realized too late he had walked straight into the devil's snare. Nothing matters in the face of absolute brute strength. The aggressor's fist smashed into his face, snapping Jibon's head back violently. "Jibon." His friends cried out, horror-struck by the brutality. "This is the wall of reality you cannot climb," Jongtae proclaimed, relentless in his assault. "I was forged on the merciless asphalt," he spat. "Did a greenhouse flower like you really think he could crush me?" He mocked, looming over him. "Know your place, trash." "Goodbye," the gangster whispered as darkness encroached on Jibon's vision. But in that void, a memory flickered, warm hands holding his face. "Cheer up." The desperate plea of the girl he cherished. "Please see it through. I love you." The words struck his soul like lightning, and his heart began to thunder like a war drum. Jibon rose, fueled by a blazing new energy regain. "Your senses," Han A-reum screamed, but the boy was already locked in, hyper-focused on his enemy. Instinctively, he caught Jongtae's heavy punch, with a cross-arm guard. "You stubborn cockroach," the aggressor cursed, stunned. That Jibon could still stand after such a beating. Jibon stared down his rival, then exploded with a thunderous counterstrike to the face. Jongtae staggered back, his balance broken. "This has turned into a war," the boy's friends whispered, sensing the shift. "Nobody is playing games anymore." Jongtae wiped blood from his lip. "It's been ages since I felt a rush like this. My dopamine is going wild," he cackled, like a maniac. "You're better than I." Imagine, the fighter admitted, eyes narrowing. "But you're still just an appetizer before the main course." He charged once more. "Music." Jibon answered with a punishing kick, standing his ground. Jongtae grinned through the pain, explaining gangsters don't have the luxury of losing. He hissed, "In our world, defeat is a death sentence." "Music," the beast roared. "I will never let you win," and slammed a fist into the boy's face. "He's fighting like a zombie," one of Jibon's friends shouted, awestruck, as the violence escalated to a fever pitch. The two warriors continued to trade life-ending blows. But Jibon's allies noticed a change. He was no longer blocking but weaving through. The attacks like smoke. Jibon slipped past another haymaker, and the aggressor cursed, vilely consumed by boiling frustration. Suddenly, one of the friends pointed. Jibon stood motionless, dropping his guard completely, a move that shocked the entire arena. Calling him a loser, Jongtae lunged for the kill, but Jibon snapped a surgical punch straight to the aggressor's chin. Kang Doyle realized that Jibon had completely downloaded his opponent's rhythm, concluding that the gangster's movements were too obvious, desperate for those single knockout blows. Jibon had predicted every trajectory and exposed the fatal weakness. After slipping the jab, the young man unleashed a bone-shattering kick with full force. The scene shifted ominously. The gangster now gripped a jagged piece of lumber. Jongtae cursed and issued a challenge, pointing the weapon menacingly at Jibon. The young man didn't flinch, merely staring at his rival with cold steel eyes. Jongtae roared that the real slaughter was beginning, music, declaring that the laws of the ring no longer applied. The atmosphere turned suffocating. Jibon's friends screamed coward, accusing him of dirty tactics. Even, the announcer shouted that weapons were a severe violation. But Jongtae commanded the losers to shut their mouths, asking if they thought this was some childish game. The challenger then provoked the entire audience, daring anyone to step up and face. Turning his malice to Jibon, he incited him to end it. "This isn't a sport, kid. It's an execution." Jibon nodded grimly. "This is a real fight." Jongtae bellowed like a demon, charging the young man. He promised to grind him into dust. The aggressor swung the makeshift torch, baiting Jibon to step into his range. The friends watched in terror, screaming about the foul play. "Don't mess with the underworld, you brat," he screamed at Jibon. But the young man intercepted the weapon with a precision kick and immediately slammed his heel into his opponent's skull. Jongtae crashed to the earth, dismantled by Jibon's technique. Spectators murmured that the beast was finished, labeling him pathetic for resorting to cheap tricks. In the chaos, Kang Doyle's keychain slipped unnoticed to the floor. Han A-reum spotted the object. I'm not done yet. Jongtae wheezed, forcing himself. Up! I won't stop until one of us is annihilated, he roared, eyes bloodshot. Music. Jibon dashed towards his rival and delivered a final direct blow. The young man struck true, sending the giant crashing back to the dust. I can't lose to a failure like you, Jongtae, protested, falling to his knees in disbelief. You have no right to feel like a victim, Jibon replied coldly. You're nothing but a tyrant preying on the weak. You felt like a god destroying other people's dreams, but that's not strength. Rot in your mediocrity for the rest of your miserable life. He delivered his final judgment. But suddenly, Jongtae drew a knife. The aggressor lunged with lethal intent. A coward's blade sought to pierce Jibon from the shadows. The gallery gasped in collective horror. Check your six, a desperate warning, thundered from the sidelines. Never show your back to a predator. Guy sneered, eyes manic with bloodlust as he lunged. He pinned Jibon to the dust, looking down like a hunter claiming his kill. I will erase your existence, young guy vowed darkly. Every time you see your scarred reflection, you will regret the day you defied me. The gangster raised the steel high. I am the apex predator here, he declared, drunk on power. But suddenly, judgment descended in a blaze of fire. Kang. Doyle crashed onto the scene, smashing a burning timber into the villain's face. He crushed Guy into the earth. Then, music. He glanced at Jibon amidst the smoke. Alive? He asked. Jibon offered a silent, stoic nod. Ah, Ram. Realized, with a start, that she was the key to Doyle's escape. Music, Kang. Doyle stared cold daggers at Jibon. Can I finish this trash? He mounted Guy, snapping a finger like a dry twig. Wait, Jibon, Music commanded. That's enough. Jung Guy shrieked from the dirt. Why? Doyle asked, voice devoid of mercy. Stop it, you crazy bastard, Guy begged. You reaped exactly what you sowed, the young fighter stated coldly. But I'm special, Guy spat back. Why? Doyle tilted his head. I am royalty in this underworld, he scoffed, turning away. Only one left, Kang Doyle whispered, snapping another bone. Kang Doyle gripped the final digit, but Jung Guy screamed for mercy. Desperate Guy launched a tirade, calling him a son of a bitch and invoking his rank. My Hyung Nim will slaughter you all when he finds out, he threatened. Kang Doyle sighed, unimpressed. Running to daddy, how pathetically childish. Suddenly, the organizer stormed in with his enforcers. Stop this madness, but an arm of steel barred his path. It was Jibon standing like a fortress, while Doyle remained the executioner over Guy. The organizer hissed at Jibon. Do you know the weight of your actions? Can you handle the fallout? Kang. Doyle glanced back with a dark smirk. Jibon met his gaze, silent and unmoving. Doyle's smile widened. Please, I'm a veteran, Jung-Guy wailed beneath him. Music, Doyle scoffed with absolute disdain. Now you truly look like garbage. He regretted ever respecting such filth. Crack. The final finger gave way. A girl stifled a scream as the horrifying sound echoed through the arena. This match is null and void, the organizer roared, trying to claim the event had descended into anarchy. Bullshit. The gangster broke the warrior's code first. The spectators revolted against the ruling. Even the gamblers conceded, that kid Jibon is the true winner. The chant began low, then thundered, Jibon, Jibon. The organizer glared, but Jibon stood impassive as a mountain. His allies declared, the victory is undeniable. The arena shook with his name. Standing beside Doyle, Jibon looked back. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the glasses-wearing mastermind trembled, Music, in rage. This result shattered his calculations. Jibon had crushed a Jokto Association enforcer live, on air. The feared syndicate would become a national laughingstock. He could practically see the money burning away. This is all that brat's fault, he seethed, plotting his next move. How do I bury this disaster? He cursed the heavens. Outside, a sleek black sedan sliced through the night. We have arrived, Hyung Nim. Wait, the boss commanded. He watched the broken figure of Jung Guy stumbling from the warehouse like a wounded dog. He's escaping, sir. Kill the engine, the superior ordered coldly. Jung Guy scrambled toward the vehicle. Hyung Nim, help me, those punks jumped me. They are still inside, we can catch them, he begged for revenge. The answer was a brutal fist to the skull. A heavy boot sent him flying. Jung Guy crawled in the dirt, crying out to his master. Did I not warn you? The man, Music, loomed over him, never to engage with students. Guy sputtered, blood and excuses gurgling, incoherently. The boss silenced him with another ruthless kick, crushing him into the pavement. While Guy whimpered, Jibon and his crew watched the gangster hierarchy crumble from a distance. He played the gangster. Doyle spat, but he was just a thug. Kang Doyle Music turned to thank Jibon, acknowledging the brotherhood. Han A-reum, however, cut in. Stop acting tough. You all need a hospital now. She scolded them like a concerned mother, but Doyle deflected. I just need a few days of sleep. He walked into the night, seeking silent approval from Jibon. In the recesses of his mind, Jibon pondered. Could he ever erase the memory of the one who controlled his heartbeat? Music. Morning light brought reality. Wake up, the teacher's voice cut through the drowsiness. Later, the school queens cornered Han A-reum. Did you give Jibon a phone? Are you insane, Yenna? Leaned in malicious curiosity in her eyes. Are you planning to date him? The question hung heavy in the air, had cornered her, fully aware of A-reum's feelings for Jibon. Yet A-reum stood her ground, insisting her emotions were far deeper than a simple fling. What is that supposed to mean? The girl scoffed. A-reum confessed that her soul yearned to understand him, to know every single piece of his existence, but her sincerity was met with scorn. The girls accused her of wearing a mask, claiming she was using a deceptive face to seduce Jion. The tension spiked. They weaponized Yana's relationship with Jibon against her. Han A-reum tried to defend herself, whispering, "We are just talking." Asterisk smack times. A hand struck her face. It was Yana. Her eyes burned with jealousy as she hissed, "Stop playing games. Listen well, I will never hand Jibon over to you." The bullies turned and walked away like queens leaving a ruin. Han A-reum stood alone, hand trembling against her stinging cheek. She murmured, "Deceptive," referring to Yana, and wondering how someone could inflict such pain without showing even a single shred of regret.